Live from Hollywood. It's Free Hollywood Live, the YouTube show where libertarian comrades continue their ongoing conversation and debates about the week's top news, pop culture. You like that, right? Disruptive technologies. Uh-oh, I'm hearing myself echo in the background. Yes, thank you.
Not anymore. There we go.
We're off to a great start here. So, yes, I am your anointed host, Anarcho-Jesus, Lord and Savior of pop culture. Thank you for joining in tonight's Give the People Back Their Goddamn Freedom live stream. Joining me tonight is the voice of common reason, albeit from the dark side. It's the professor of alchemy with a doctorate in many abilities some consider to be unnatural, Darth Yoda.
Yeah,
welcome, my friend.
How's it going, Jesus?
Well, things suddenly went quiet. I thought I was going to have to deal with the party next door. We'll see if they come back. It's kind of like a Latino party going on next door, man. It was like full-on mariachi band or something. It was so loud, so loud.
No social distancing?
I think some people next door are kind of breaking quarantine.
Uh-oh.
But they're doing it in small groups, small families.
Where's Quarantine Karen when we need her?
Oh God, that's a great meme going around. You know, they in the Fandom Menace, they've renamed Kathleen Kennedy to be Karen Kennedy. That happened sometime last week. Yeah, they found the Karen hair and photoshopped it onto Kathleen Kennedy's.
Her.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. So it's Kathleen Karen Kennedy. Absolutely, man. So how are you feeling today, man?
Good. The
quarantine's been on for quite a long time.
Yeah, I haven't encountered any Karens today, but I haven't sought them out either. So
it's good, man. So you're keeping your social distancing on? Are you doing the 5?
I forget what the 5 are, honestly.
Oh,
I'm washing my hands.
Oh, you're currently washing your. Well, you're doing the 5 then. The 5. Let's see if I can remember. Let's see. It's wash your hands, people. Right. Don't touch your face. Sneeze into your sleeve. Cough and sneeze into your sleeve. And wear your mask. That'd be 5. That's do the 5.
Cool.
So, are you finished with your 5 now? Oh.
Yeah, I haven't been wearing a mask like every random place I go. That's for sure. Still amused at the sight of people who are in their cars with nobody else around them, but they have their masks on.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. It's pretty funny. So people are laughing at me as I'm doing that, I guess. As I'm driving around for Postmates, it's just...
So you're wearing a mask in the car?
Well, think about it. I can get, first of all, ha, 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 ha. It's really ha, ha, hilarious. It's like masturbating with a condom on. I get it. Ha, ha, ha. But put yourself in some people's shoes. There's reasons. I'm driving for Postmates. It's kind of annoying taking it on and off and on and off and on all day. Sometimes you just want to leave it on. Other reasons, well, early in this thing, when they first issued that mask edict, I guess, it kind of helps reinforce the social aspect of wearing it. I know that sounds lame for a libertarian to be saying, but it was a thought that crossed my mind.
You were avoiding the Libertarian Purity Test here tonight, so we don't know quite how lame you are for a libertarian.
I guess that's funny, man. No, I wasn't avoiding the Libertarian Purity Test. I was suggesting that maybe we put it off for another week because maybe it would take too long to get together. But you know what? I took a look at that link you sent, and it's not that bad. Maybe we can get into that later.
There's only like 50 questions on it. I thought it was a lot longer, but.
And by the way, we have a guest possibly joining us tonight. One person that's been in the news recently, not only in the United States, well, I guess mostly in the United States, but also in Chinese news, probably local Chinese news.
That was just like LA area Chinese news, right? Yeah.
Juliet. Oh, and by the way, let me bring up the banner for tonight. Boom. There we go. Free Hollywood Live. Give them back their GD freedom. That was Elon Musk. And by the way, we probably shouldn't bury the lead with this, right? Let's
Oh yeah, talk about Elon.
Yeah, let me see if let's talk a little bit about Elon Musk. Oh man, I'm not fully prepared for this right now. I had some videos that I sent myself. Let me see if they're, oh, this is great. It's been so long since we've live streamed Yoda that
that links have gone missing and never to emerge again.
Well, I've sent myself so many links of things to cover in the show that, like, there's no way we could get through all this. And
yeah, we've got like 2 weeks worth of links and a month's worth of memes.
Jeez, I'm just going through it right now. Like, holy, Joe Rogan laughing at President Biden's mental problem. Yeah. Okay. Well, some of this stuff we'll get into. As far as what I officially had on for tonight.
If you can't find it, I mean, we're 3 minutes from weekly Bitcoin close.
Oh, right. Well, we can come back to it. And I just want to say, like, not to bury the lead, Elon Musk on the Tesla earnings call this week, which, by the way, just keep in mind, Tesla earnings call. Now, there have been things that have happened in the past on Tesla earnings call. And in fact, it may be Marsman bad once again. Like, is he back to his old habits? I don't know. But he may also be the hero. He
He tweeted that he got into a big fight with Grimes. So maybe. Then
it all makes sense.
Yeah.
That all makes sense because it seems like a year and a half ago, when things were starting to kind of go weird with Elon, it was at the end of a relationship. I think it was actually around the beginnings of his relationship with Grimes. So it makes sense that would have something to do with this. But it totally seems like he may be turning Marsman bad, but then again, he also may be the hero we libertarians do not deserve. Since he's the one demanding an end to stay-at-home orders, and so many libertarians have given him a hard time. Those leading voices, such as Tom Woods and Doug Casey, for example, like really never gives Elon the credit that is his due.
Oh, really? No, I don't remember. What did Tom Woods have to say about him?
Nothing but criticism every time the subject of Tesla or Elon comes up. It's always about subsidies. I mean, one of these days, maybe we'll get into the subsidies things. It's such a bummer topic to get into. I don't really like to, be a downer on the stream. But let's look at the crypto. Here we go.
Yep. We got 1 minute to close. So let's
share my screen share. Bang, bang, bang. We're sharing screens. Do you see that? All right. Let's get to the weekly. And is that Bitcoin or Ethereum? Yeah, that's Bitcoin.
No, you're on Ethereum.
Oh no, this Bitcoin, isn't it?
Are you sure? It says Ethereum US dollar.
Let me see. BTC. Let's just get into it to make sure. Not on BitBay. That's a horrible exchange, horrible data. There we go. Coinbase is okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's good enough.
Bang.
So there we go. That's the kind of green candle I like. We're
look, it fulfilled my arrow. Like
that arrow from like way back on yeah.
Well, okay, and look, and we just closed the week and a new candle has just now begun. So let's just examine what we have here on this weekly time frame.
7 green weeklies in a row.
Does that mean Tom Vase's 9 is coming in 2 weeks?
Could be.
He hasn't said that yet, but I do listen to his live stream just about every day. Yeah, and so what we seem to be having here is a bull trend.
Yeah, I mean, it took us long enough, but we finally have erased the losses of that ugly Thursday in mid-March, whatever day that was, March the, like 11th, 12th, 13th, something like that. So yeah, that ugly red candle, as you may recall, that a lot of that was all happened on one day, especially that nasty wick underneath it. But now we've erased all of those losses, and looks like we've erased the red candle, the smaller red candle that preceded it too. So we're not all the way back to 10,000 yet, obviously, which is where that series of 3 pretty big red candles in a row kicked off. But
okay,
it's a
so
nice little trend up.
Let's take a look at the S&P real quick, because this is kind of similar to what we have with the S&P. And we've been revisiting this conversation every week around this time, except for last week.
The question of correlation.
Yeah, and sorry about missing last week. If anyone was looking for the stream, just kind of lost the momentum there for a couple of weeks, but we're back. All right, so pulling up the S&P. Okay, see, it's kind of similar here on the weekly, but you can see that Bitcoin is higher.
Yeah,
it's a lot closer to where it began. In fact, there was a chart that Carl from the Moon channel called the Moon. Bang, is that what you do? Okay, right. Okay, we're gonna do this again. Okay, so Carl of the channel The Moon has created an overlay of the S&P.
With Bitcoin?
With Bitcoin and also with gold.
Oh, good.
And
I think gold was relatively quiet this week. I feel like we're kind of hanging around 1,700, give or take, like a few, like $20 on either side. I didn't look at it that closely this week.
Yeah.
So where are we? I just pulled up the Kitco app. Gold is at 1,700, and silver is a little under $15. Dead air. The reptilians have captured Anarcho-Jesus and dragged him deep into the hollow earth. Oh, I hear Anarcho-Jesus trying to break through there, but so we may just have technical difficulties on Anarcho-Jesus's end rather than full-on reptilian abduction.
All right, I'm back. There, can you hear me?
All right, he's back, sort of.
Hello.
There you go.
Hello, Internet. Yeah. Oh, disk's not ejected properly. Okay, yeah, my laptop died. Battery, damn. I had it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have this routine that I go through because I don't like to just leave my laptop plugged in all the time and the battery at 100%. So I unplug it and I kind of cycle it through, let it run down. But sometimes, like just then, I forget to plug it in. Usually a warning comes up, but I didn't see it, I guess, because I was focused on live streaming.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for stalling. Where were we? What was I doing?
Where were we? I don't know, because I was starting to.
Oh, that's right. I got it.
Go on and on about like wondering if you had been abducted away into the middle of the hollow earth somewhere. But
oh, geez, here it is. It's the yeah, there it is. Bang.
All right. Yeah, you were looking for the overlay of the S&P, Bitcoin, and gold, right?
Yes. Got it. There it is.
There you go. All right.
And yeah,
so Bitcoin clearly, kind of like I was mentioning, gold was pretty quiet this week.
See, for a minute there, Bitcoin not only seemed as though it was correlated.
And what is this? Is this daily candles?
Yeah, that's kind of lame that he didn't include that information. Well, he's also using line chart, so yeah, I guess he's just trying to point out a general trend, but I don't know. Let me take a look at daily so we can just compare.
Yeah,
it's likely daily. back that chart up. Dang. Daily. Yep, it's starting to look. Yep, that looks like daily.
Yeah, that looks like
either daily or four. No, it's daily because I think I counted that there were 3 candles there. Let's take a look. Yep, see there was 3 candles.
Yeah, that's
so
daily.
So we have Bitcoin on the daily compared to gold and the S&P 500. And for the longest time, as we've been revisiting this topic week after week, there seems to have been a correlation between Bitcoin and the S&P. And the question we've had is that leading voices in the Bitcoin space, as well as they should have had this thesis, is that Bitcoin will be a safe haven asset at some point in the future. At some point when the dollar's struggling or the economics are shaky, Bitcoin has more solid fundamentals and will become that safe haven asset, that uncorrelated asset. We just haven't seen a whole lot of evidence of that until now.
Yeah. And then obviously, you know, when we were looking at that weekly, I pointed out that nasty red candle, and especially its wick down that was virtually all transpired on one day. And that was a day that, you know, mainstream markets took a big crap too. And as did gold, if I remember correctly. And that was when a silver spot was down to around $11. So it seemed like everything was correlated, but in the worst possible way back in March. You know, and everything crashed altogether. It's like your safe havens. No, none of them are going to be safe.
Yeah, nothing seemed safe except for Gilead Sciences. It seemed, and Walmart.
Not only do you not get to go to your safe space, you get no safe haven in the market.
It was incredible, and I recall watching some very valuable stocks go to unprecedented lows that I thought to myself, my God.
Sorry, like Disney was down like what? Disney was
down to like
under 100.
79.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, did it get down into the 70s?
I think it did.
I feel like it did. Yeah.
I think it may have like just touched 78, something wick down there for a day.
And even, you know, your beloved Tesla crashed back down through 420. It was
380.
Under 400 even.
Yeah, 380 is where it wicked down. 380 was the previous high, so that kind of makes sense that would be the place that it finds new support here on a longer term time frame, of course.
Yeah, and it didn't even have like the Marsman Twitter rationale for that, saying he's going to sell all his stock, all his worldly possessions, and go live in the woods.
Oh, you're talking about recent tweets?
Yeah.
Man, what's going on with Elon Musk right now?
I mean, Grimes, chill.
Oh man,
be nice to him.
So he tweeted, I think it was it Friday after hours?
I think this all might have been on Friday. This tweet storm,
and one of the tweets was Tesla's overvalued, or the Tesla share price is too high. That's literally what the tweet was. The Tesla share price is too high now.
And that other tweet was like, I'm basically getting rid of all my possessions, and and then there was Grimes and I just had a big fight.
Now I didn't take the I'm getting rid of my earthly possessions thing to literally like he's doing it now. I just assumed he's speaking of his long-term plans of getting
maybe he
prepared for Mars.
Did he take your brother's advice to give all his possessions to the poor and follow your brother?
Maybe. Hey, man, weirder things have happened. We have Donald Trump in the White House. I mean, anything can happen. Wow. Could you imagine Elon Musk bringing Christianity to Mars?
Wow.
Preaching the gospel to the red planet. I don't think that's kind of the mission here, but there is a mission for sure. And Elon's planning to go. So I know that selling off earthly possessions, all of them, at some point may be in the cards. I couldn't imagine that he would, leave his sons here on Earth empty-handed.
Yeah.
And they're too young, really, to be considering taking them with him. You know what I mean? I don't know, like maybe that gives us a bit of a time frame. He was always talking about, Tesla needs to be in a right place. His businesses need to be in a right place. But maybe his kids need to be at a right age for them to be able to make the decision whether or not to go.
Oh, I don't know. How old are his kids?
Well, he has twins and triplets, and they're pretty close in age. So let me check real quick. I think this would be a good time to do some fact checking. This would be something Justice would be doing right now if he were here. Earlier, I was looking up for the Paris dance party.
You were looking up top 6 nightclubs in Paris.
I was trying to find that article that one of you guys sent me about the Paris protests where the people got together to dance in a public park to protest stay-at-home orders.
Yeah, that was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that was so long ago that it's like not even really worth.
But there's still a lot going on.
Javier Musk. Wow. Damian Musk. Saxon Musk. Oh, he's a Saxon. Nevada Alexander Musk and Griffin Musk.
Yeah, if we ever get into the Darth Yoda history of metal, we'll have to cover the band Saxon at some point.
Dude, this is really sad, though, real quick. There's 6 names here.
Okay.
Yeah, I just totally forgot about he lost a son.
I didn't know that.
I'm not sure which one. Well,
scroll down, like I can see just under our thing there that tragically Nevada. Go back up.
Oh.
See, tragically Nevada passed away, aged 10 weeks.
Oh, there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So it was Nevada Alexander Musk.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's really tragic. I knew that there was a story there. But like I said, he had twins and triplets, and I believe they were all lab made. And in IVF, that's in vitro fertilization. Yeah. So let's see their ages now. Click here. So let's see. His first son was Nevada Alexander. Okay.
His oldest, who
tragically, okay. So he was born separate from the others.
Okay, so 2004 and 2006. So, definitely getting into their teens at this point.
And the Mars window is later this year, and it's every 2 years. So we're looking at 2022.
In terms of Mars being kind of close enough or at the right angle to
Yeah. So basically, when the planets get into a certain alignment, where the trip will be a shorter distance,
easier, to pull off rather than we're on like opposite sides of our respective orbits or something.
Yeah, our propulsion systems are still pretty rudimentary at this point, even with all the advances that SpaceX has made. I mean, we're not talking Star Trek level technology here. There's no warp drives yet. So we're trying to save ourselves a little bit of distance and fuel if we can. And so that window is every 2 years. And it looks like 2022, then again, and it's not exactly 2 years either. It's offset. So it may be 2025 after that. And then like 2027. Here, let's just look it up. This is great. The internet.
So basically, like if he wanted to pull off 2022, it's time to do that is rapidly approaching.
Yeah. What do they call that? The Mars
launch window? Try a launch window.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Thank you.
I think that's right.
You have a beautiful brain.
Yeah, there you go. March launch window and distance from Earth. Okay.
Oh, and here's a nice little vector animation depicting what
we're talking about here. Yep.
So you can see like the elliptical orbits that are happening come close together during this stage.
Yeah.
And so you're able to just basically fall off of the Earth, and then it's funny the way this is depicted. It has the ship kind of just making a sideways transition. It's just translating sideways, super fast, and then eventually, boom. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So it says a launch period refers to the days that the rocket can launch to reach its intended orbit. A mission could have a period of 365 days in a year, a few weeks each month. Okay. Yeah, I was just looking for kind of a list of when these windows are. Launch windows. Here's what a launch window is. Right. Well, anyway, clicking off of that. Oh, this is something fun for later.
There's some pop culture here.
Yes,
I saw
yes,
something
indeed.
about Star Wars there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, and there's craziness in Star Wars right now, in Star Wars land.
Well, what else is new?
Kathleen Kennedy has reared her head and has flexed.
Uh-oh.
It's the ultimate flex. She's brought in a new assistant, and we'll get into it later. It was Harvey Weinstein's former assistant, and
Oh, ew. That can't be good.
anyway, so
we have a shrieking SJW next to Elon there. Is there a significance to this?
Yeah, because we were talking early on, like in February, about the political nature. Early on, I believe you and Justice were a little more skeptical of this whole COVID situation in the very, very beginning, and there was, and a lot of people were, even Trump in the beginning was very dismissive, and I was very critical of that, if you recall.
Yeah, and Elon was too.
Elon has never been fully. It's not that he denies the science. It just seems like he feels it's crazy that how it's affected society and the economy.
Yeah, no, Elon has never been like viruses don't exist or something.
Right. He never went that way. But what's happening to his company?
But he said that it was that the reaction to this has been, way overboard.
Yeah, he said it was. What was the word he used?
Oh no, yeah, we'd have to pull up his tweets from February, but
something.
Yeah, he was skeptical about the. I think he literally called it dumb or something.
Dumb. That's what it was. He said all this panic around COVID is dumb. And then he said this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the video because why not? This is what we came here for. Let's not bury the lead. Oh, I guess we've kind of already done that. Okay, not. Oh crap! I lost my place on that video, but that's all right. We'll find it. Where is it? Oh no, that is it. Okay, bang. All right. You know what? I'm just gonna bring up the audio because there's nothing really to see here. This is Elon Musk at the Tesla earnings call, which took place Wednesday of last week. Okay. And I try to tune into all the Tesla earnings call. I mean, full disclosure, I'm a Tesla owner and a shareholder.
Oh, is this is this where he literally starts talking about fascism and? Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, this is
and
good
I don't know that everyone out there's actually heard the full context of it and things. So here we have is a slightly edited, but mostly unedited clip of Elon Musk at the earnings call from last week.
We are a bit worried about not being able to resume production in the Bay Area, and that should be identified as a serious risk. That we only have two car factories right now, one in Shanghai and one in the Bay Area, and the Bay Area produces the vast majority of our cars, all of S and X, and most of the 3 and all of the Y. So the extension of the shelter in place, or frankly, I would call it forcibly imprisoning people in their homes against all their constitutional rights. That's my opinion.
I mean, it's not funny, but just to hear that on a conference call.
Mm-hmm.
Breaking people's freedoms in ways that are horrible and wrong.
I mean, like totally red-pilled. And this is the thing. I wanted to have all the videos. I have found the videos, and I'm going to make the video. But Elon Musk is a libertarian, people. And I've been saying this for years, but not everyone is listening to me, I mean, they'd rather listen to Tom Woods and Doug Casey, and I get that because they're very highly respected people. I respect those guys. I used to subscribe to Doug Casey's newsletter. You know, Tom Woods, I've made videos featuring some of his video clips and views, and I've promoted him over the years. Definitely been a big follower and so forth. But yeah, there's never been anything positive about Tesla or Elon Musk coming out of their mouths, and a whole lot of criticisms that were really baseless. Like, for example, the subsidies argument. You know, one of the things they say was subsidies early on was the Department of Energy loan that was going to be given away to some company in order to accelerate their alternative energy programs. It was going to be given to Ford, you know, so that they would not make an electric car. So Tesla went ahead and applied for and received the loan. It was $500 million. Not like super substantial when we're talking about the kind of numbers we've been talking about lately with these bailouts, but they took that money in order to actually fulfill the goal of the program and to accelerate their electric car program. And it actually helped. And Elon basically gives that as his reason for having taken that loan, was like, you know, look, we're the small guys at that point, and we're fighting against the big guys who were going to just basically take that money and not use it for the electric car programs that we were going to. So we took the money, we built the car, and then we started making money enough that we paid the loan back within a year. They paid the loan back like within a year, and there were actually penalties for paying that loan back early. And
Oh, wow.
Tesla went ahead and paid that too. Because they were getting a lot of criticism from people like Tom Woods and so forth, saying, subsidies, this wouldn't be a viable company if it weren't for the government. It's just, you know, it's all hoopla and magic, smoke and mirrors and con man talk. You know, that's all it is. And so Elon said, look, we're going to pay the loan back. Are you happy? No, you know, these people are never happy. And I'm not just saying with Tom Woods and Doug Casey, talking about like just this whole side of the short thesis, this just this media bias and so forth against Elon and Tesla. Now, I'm not saying that it's totally without merit, especially when he's doing weird things like this past week and things he did like a year and a half ago. Seeing a pattern here, but it's okay. Like, you should be able to give, I think we should be able to give our geniuses a little bit of freedom as well to be weird and to do weird stuff and to say things that are a little bit off the wall and make people scratch their heads and so forth. You know, look, that's a personal opinion. I'm not going to make a big case
you're
for
absolutely
that.
right. You know, yeah, we need more weirdness and weird geniuses.
But we just won't have any more if we keep slamming them for being themselves. You know, I think Elon is of freedom within himself as a multi-billionaire to be able to express himself and to not really worry too much about what people think. He has fuck you money.
Oh, Karen in HR doesn't want you to be weird.
Nor to be red pilled. Nor to be talking about
none of those things. So Karen
so
doesn't approve.
Back to Elon.
And not black people came to America or built this country. What the fuck? Excuse me. People,
you hear that?
Outrage. Outrage.
I'm going to just back that up a second so we can get the full context.
Built this country. What the fuck? Excuse me. And not black people came to America or built this country. What the fuck? Excuse me. Built this country. What the fuck? Excuse me.
So you got that?
Loud and clear.
Earnings call.
The outrage. It's outrage. It will cause great harm, not just to Tesla, but to many companies. And while Tesla will weather the storm, there are many small companies that will not. And all everything people have worked for their whole life is being destroyed in real time. And we're going to have many suppliers, and are having many suppliers that are having super hard times, especially the small ones. And it's causing a lot of strife to a lot of people. You know, this is a time to think about the future.
Okay, so there was a cut right there. That was where the edit is. So that was one statement that Elon made a little earlier in the conference call. But then he wanted to come back to that topic, like in the next question. Maybe it was 2 questions later. So like 5 or 10 minutes later, here he continues.
You know, this is a time to think about the future. and also to ask, is it right to infringe upon people's rights, as what is happening right now? I think the people are going to be very angry about this and are very angry. It's just like if somebody wants to stay in their house, that's great. They should be allowed to stay in their house, and they should not be compelled to leave. But to say that they cannot leave their house and they will be arrested if they do, this is fascist. This is not democratic. This is not freedom. Give people back their goddamn freedom. Okay, let's go to the next question, please.
So I love how he just let that sit.
Mm-hmm.
He just let it sit until someone spoke and said, okay, going to the next call.
Okay, next question.
I mean, that was wow. Like, that was a wow moment. I'm sitting there listening to this earnings call going, like, especially in light of conversations, present company and company not present have been having offline and such about the reality of COVID and also the response and the government tyranny and all that. But look, I don't want to chase that rabbit too far before I make the first point that I was trying to make, and that is it's becoming political again. Like in the beginning, there was a fear that it was political and not so real, and then it's like the Joe Rogan podcast had that virologist on, and we were willing to accept, okay, well, this thing's real. You know, I was already preparing at that point, regardless, real or not. It's like, prepare people because the panic is coming. And I was warning people. And then it's like, we've been in this thing for a couple of months now. Government's paying us to stay home. And people are getting restless, and it's weird, you know, seeing how restless, like there's people on the streets when I'm out driving Postmates, just driving nuts, like nothing has changed. I mean, there's hardly any cars on at all, but they're just like zooming all around. It's weird how this has affected different people in different ways. But this is becoming political again, in the sense that it seems as though people that are anti-Trump are trying to use this now as kind of a way to wreck the economy and to hurt Trump for the election. So they're really kind of getting really heavy-fisted with the draconian measures at a time when Trump himself is trying to say, hey guys, ease off. It's time to start reopening. It's time to start thinking about getting back to normal again, baseball and going out and voting and all that. And but some governors are really being hard against the people, saying, no, it's a lockdown time. And
right, including Gavin Newsom is one of the most hardcore of all.
Yeah, tell me more. I'm not really, honestly, I don't pay attention to mainstream news.
Yeah,
I listen to the Friday Tax Force, and that's it.
What's interesting is Elon pointed out in that earnings call, like how angry some people are getting. You know, I think you've seen that where some of the demonstrators have shown up, maybe not in California. You know, I haven't seen this in images we've seen from LA and from Huntington Beach. But in the Midwest states, Michigan, Wisconsin, you know, people have been showing up armed to demonstrations. I mean, there's a certain small but loud percentage of people who are getting like pretty pissed right now.
Yeah, Elon is relating to the people, and I think Trump is too. It's kind of been wild to see him walk that fine line, as president. Whereas in the beginning, he seemed dismissive when I was already at the point of having seen the news coming in from China and becoming a bit alarmed and thinking that he should take it more seriously. But he did, in fact, close the travel from China around that time, into January. So even though he wasn't speaking out about it and causing panic and fear, behind the scenes, he was actually doing some things. Then finally, when they came out and said, look, we have this task force now and they're going to take this serious, and it became quarantine time. You know, he basically has taken all the advice from Fauci, all the advice, every single recommendation, he's done it. Like there's nothing that you could point at to say that Trump was not cooperative with what the statists themselves were asking for. You know, the people that, you know, the Bill Gates people and so forth. You know, he did everything that was required of the best minds in the virology space, right? At least that's, you know, recognized as such. I know that there's a large and growing number of people out there that really question these experts and so forth. But
yeah, well, Trump certainly has gone along with what the experts told him to go along with. But
right, that's my point.
What he's reiterated all along is that the cure can't be worse than the disease.
Yes,
and that's his kind of like shorthand way of saying
he's
actually right about this. I'm not necessarily a diehard Orange Man fan, but nor am I a diehard Orange Man bad fan. And so when he's right, I will certainly point out when he's right. And he's right on this one, that the cure should not be worse than the disease. And if, you know, the cure ultimately ends up being, you know, a mental health crisis of people trapped inside, you know, spiraling into, you know, depression, panic, suicidality. You've seen suicide rates spiking. So yeah, that's certainly a cure that's potentially worse than the disease.
Indeed.
Then you know, look more broadly at the economic situation. We already had a fragile economy, as anybody who's studied the Austrian school, you know, can understand in terms of where monetary policy has been going for years. But man, this sure didn't help what was already a fragile situation.
And the worse the situation gets, I think now the Democrats are seeing, here's our chance. You know, the worse things get, the better our chances become. If we can drag this thing out, the closer to November it gets, the better for us. So now it's become political once again. That's why the SJW is screaming in the thumbnail.
Yeah. So you're wondering if there's a certain amount of what like Cuomo and Newsom and you know, whoever else is doing that is just like, you know, pure, just cold political calculation.
Well, I don't think it was that at first, but this is you know, the goalposts are being moved every day. I mean, this thing is a shifting situation with data that's coming out every day. But it just seems to me as though, as I'm looking at the data, and I'm personally in my worldview and assessment of the situation, I'm beginning to move towards reopening in my personal life, reopening the restaurant. You know, we're thinking about the timeline on that and the steps. You know, it's all happening now. And but yet these governors are like, no, it's not happening. No, this thing's staying closed. We're going to keep it closed as long as possible. Well, at least through November.
Stay off the beach. Sit home. Get fat. Get some more underlying conditions from sitting on the couch all day. Don't be out in the sun. Don't be on the beach.
You mentioned underlying conditions. I'm wondering,
there's a heat wave.
Yes.
Heat wave in SoCal last weekend. Get off the beach. Go home. Swelter inside.
Yes. Share some germs.
Die from heat stroke from being cooped up inside. Don't be out at the beach.
Well, there's a side of this whole debate that is, and rightly so, and I think this is the part of the perhaps the anti-vax movement that is, you know, the good part. Okay. I'm you know, you always have to have something that's absolutely true in order to have something that's not true to sneak itself in there.
Right. The grain of truth that
and this is more than a grain. I mean, this is a huge truth, and that is, and you just said it yourself, underlying conditions.
Yeah.
You know, like the reason people succumb to COVID-19 or any other disease is underlying conditions.
Yeah, that was precisely my point. And that's another aspect of the whole, the cure shouldn't be worse than the disease issue. Like the heavy-handed, you know, way that some, you know, maybe not all, but some local cops here and there are handling people being outside, getting sunlight, getting exercise, getting fresh air is unbelievable. Like, you know, I kind of was like sarcastic and like jokingly ranting that like, oh yes, the healthy thing to do is to sit inside, eat Cheetos, get fat, and get some underlying conditions. But, you know, effectively that's what ends up happening if you say like, no, we're closing all the state beaches, we're closing the state parks. Like, you cannot be out soaking up the sun and you know, boosting your vitamin D levels and you know, moving around outside. No, you are safer at home.
Yeah, that's getting a little old, especially as the data has been coming in. You know, the curve is effectively flattened. I mean, there's been spikes here and there as testing has widened and so forth. My wife was tested, by the way.
Oh yeah, come back okay?
Yeah, she does not have it.
So currently. That fear that you're in Vegas with thousands of people from Wuhan.
Well, that's not the same test. That's a separate test. That's the serum test. And if you have antibodies that have been produced from previous exposure, the serum test would supposedly.
Okay, so this was not the antibody test that she got.
No, this is just the test to see whether or not you currently are infected.
It right now? Okay.
Yeah, in fact, not to bring the stream down a notch, but our friend Charlie Veach reported in a video this week that his uncle. Do you know Charlie Veach? Do you remember Charlie Veach of the Love Police? You remember?
Yeah, the name rings a bell. This is like old school Ron Paul grassroots or something.
Ron Paul adjacent.
Adjacent. Okay.
Yeah, he was more anarcho-primitivist out of the UK.
Okay.
Though he himself is a YouTuber, I mean, you know, using the technology and so forth. But, you know, he's anarcho something. So I felt a kindred spirit with him. We used to email back and forth from time to time, you know, so I consider him like an acquaintance, a fellow traveler here in this journey through the cosmos on Spaceship Earth. And I think he would kind of appreciate the way I put that, because his channel, you know, he has very... the way he has observed everything from Ron Paul until now on his YouTube channel is pretty amazing, like entertaining and inspirational, red pill. And some, I don't know, it's like at one point here's the thing he was known for, by the way, if you're kind of thinking, yeah, this sounds familiar, I'm still not sure who he is. He's really known for, he was a 9/11 truther who was convinced against 9/11 truth. You remember that?
Interesting. Okay. No, I'm still not remembering him very closely, but that rarely happens, that like truthers decide that like, oh wait, you know, like all this stuff is wrong. That's
right. Yeah. And so I believe his YouTube channel kind of died after that, and he hasn't been super active, and it hasn't been as popular as it was before when he was trending back during those Ron Paul years. I always wanted to get together with him, you know, like go out and do a video together or something along those lines. But anyway, he's doing videos now, and he reports that his uncle was reporting flu-like symptoms, and he went in and was tested positive for COVID-19, and within 24 hours, he was dead. So my heart goes out to Charlie Veach. You know, take care, buddy. Sorry to hear about that. And then, you know, Rand Paul contracted and was totally asymptomatic. That was a little close to home for libertarians. But then to hear a fellow YouTuber has a close family that succumbed to it, you know, that's getting a little closer. I still don't personally know anyone. So just checking with people out there. Do you know anyone who has contracted COVID or shown symptoms of and are being tested? Have you been tested? Hit us up in the comments with your experiences. Are you still quarantining? Are you wearing your mask? Do you wear your mask when you drive? I know, it's silly. But yeah, definitely hit us up and hit that like. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for stopping by and having a few laughs with us. You want to see that Falcon 9 was nined?
What happened with it?
This Falcon literally landed in front of the camera that was the Falcon 9 SpaceX rocket is right behind this bird, and this so the Falcon was 9 by this Falcon here, and he just sat there just dancing away for a really long time.
So is this just a random bird, or was this something a bird they released on purpose here?
No, it just landed in front of the camera randomly, and eventually flew away. But this made it to the internets. Yeah, there's where he flies away. Well, I don't see the rocket back there. I must have got that part wrong. Well, anyway, that made the story better. Well, speaking of Mars, maybe we could change topics just for a second. Not fully, though, because we're still on Elon, basically talking about SpaceX. And there's this podcast that I listen to, not every time because it's kind of long, but these are some of my favorite Tesla YouTubers. And they're having a conversation about what would happen once we get to Mars. Like, how do you decide property rights? Now, these guys aren't necessarily libertarians in any kind of formal sense, but maybe in the kind of informal sense that we're all kind of libertarian, the way we
or at least
operate.
in the thinking about it sense. Presumably they're going to discuss homesteading at some point.
Well, and that's the thing. And it's been a while since I've heard this. This was a couple of weeks ago. So it'd be kind of like listening to it again for the first time. And I thought we could react to listening to these guys talk about what that would be like, and talk a little bit about homesteading on Mars.
Absolutely. My biggest concern, well, not really a concern, it's like a question, I guess. It's who really, like, Elon wants to establish a colony on Mars, right? Does he have to, like, ask for permission to do that? Or, like, because it's like, back then, like, pirates were like, people were just like, oh, land.
By the way, shout out to the Third Row Tesla podcast. That's where this is from.
And now he's gonna be like, okay, well, now we got Mars. It's time for us to go to the moons of Jupiter or the asteroid belt. And someone be like, no,
No, Space Force.
And that's actually a good question. I don't know if Space Force would be the the dictating force there.
The space police, they'd come in their starship and be like, pull over.
I don't know. That's something that's, again, well outside of space. There is space. I know a space lawyer. There's like actual space lawyers, and there was a recent directive from the presidential administration currently about making sure that kind of like a finders keepers clause almost. I'll say it like in that term that if you go to the moon, you can use its resources, which in my opinion makes total sense. Like, I'm sorry, if you get your butt to the moon and then you're like, nope, don't touch the dirt. Like, I'm sorry, I'm touching the dirt. Like, you can't
stop you anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead. Like,
just pause right there for a second. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think I agree with the point that this last guy seems to be making of, like, if you get to the moon, have at it. Because, like, literally, like, I mean, this does boil down to the question of, like, where does property come from? Does it come from the fact that the American government stuck a flag in the moon over 50 years ago? Or does it come from somewhere else? Who owns Mars? Right now, I don't think anybody owns Mars. Nobody owns Mars. Nobody owns the moon in terms of, like, where property actually comes from. Property would come from somebody getting there and doing something, setting up, a base and figuring out what to do there. I mean, like, right now, there's literally nobody there. So, and that's the principle of homesteading is, like, you get to a piece of land that has no previous claim on it, and you do something with it. You put a house there. You go and dig for gold or whatever you're looking for there. So you do something with that. So yeah, and that's
Man.
probably not the best explanation in the world, or definition of homesteading. So I'm just talking off the top of my head here, but
no,
certainly
great
at this juncture, nobody owns Mars and nobody owns the moon. An American flag, sitting in the Sea of Tranquility, notwithstanding, because nobody has gotten to these places and developed them or done anything there. So,
man, I am so tempted to chase a conspiracy rabbit, but I'm going to not do that and instead talk about the asteroid mining operations that are they're in their beginning phases now. Entrepreneurs are setting out to mine asteroids, and basically for years they've been talking about this very topic, and what they have concluded is the very libertarian conclusion of homesteading, that if you can put your resources together in such a way to get some sort of vehicle to an asteroid to stake a claim, and basically they're talking about like a homing beacon of some sort. Like basically if they can get the homing beacon on the asteroid, that asteroid's theirs, because no one else was challenging them for this asteroid. No one else spent their resources in such a way that could get them to the asteroid to place the homing beacon. And the homing beacon is just staking the claim that we're coming back to this asteroid to develop it later on, to mine it for resources and so forth. Like how big of an industry that will be, I don't know. I'm not really wanting to chase that conversation either. But the homesteading principle of it, I noticed early on, that was like a decade ago when they were first talking about that. But yeah, this is totally the same thing now with Mars, except for Mars is a whole lot bigger
than an asteroid.
And here's the other thing. Potentially there will be competition. China right now is working on copying SpaceX as best as they can. They're a few years behind. They're not going to make it first, but they're going to make it eventually. They're very good at copying, and they even have access to Elon Musk in China part of the year as he's there for his Tesla factory and so forth.
And then obviously, if you have a private company there and then a state there, it opens up all kinds of, potential problems. If we say like, okay, SpaceX gets there, but then the Chinese, government gets there too. Then what happens?
Then that's when you bring out the laser blasters and you find out who's real.
Yeah. Or you nuke Mars, like this guy's shirt recommends. Although I assume he refers to, long-term terraforming, but...
It is, and it's a play off of the shirt I own, the Occupy Mars shirt.
Yeah, I also have the Occupy Mars shirt, but...
Oh, okay. So you notice the Mars on this shirt is green and blue.
Yeah. It's not the current red Mars. It's, the Mars of maybe 500 years from now, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. Maybe even sooner if you nuke it properly.
Yeah.
That was... Elon first suggested that on the Stephen Colbert show. It's like a classic interview with Elon before he was super popular. But Stephen Colbert was like, I heard, you talking about nuking Mars. And he's like, yeah, I'm really thinking about that would be a good way to... He's like, you're a supervillain. I knew it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, you really, before you go down that road, you really absolutely have to ascertain whether there's life of any kind that has developed on Mars. So, are you gonna terraform it and like totally change up this planet when there, is some sort of life existing on there? I think that's a serious ethical question.
Oh, here's Darth Yoda taking the blue pill again. There's a again, it happens so often. No, I'm just kidding. But this is definitely one thing to consider. I don't know if you knew this, but this very topic is being used currently by a group of people to try to prevent any kind of humans to Mars ever occurring. Because, who are we? to disrupt. And it's kind of a thing like, yeah, I get the argument, but your conclusion of the argument is way extreme. But the thing is, because that conclusion, that extreme conclusion is out there, I don't want to promote that idea even at all, because these people would not have humans ever on Mars, ever, which would basically limit our ability to expand beyond Earth, because Mars is the launching platform. See, that's what people, Mars is not an end in of itself. Mars is a launching platform to the rest of the galaxy.
Yeah.
Which you can't do from the hard gravity well of Earth. It's very difficult to get off of this planet. That's why there's so much debate about whether we ever went to the moon. There's a radiation belt. There's this deep gravity well. It takes a tremendous amount of energy. It takes a tremendous amount of resources to be able to do this thing, so much so that many people think that it never ever happened and it never will. It's just because it's so tremendously hard. But from Mars, it's a piece of cake, man. Europa, Saturn, Pluto, everything. Nothing's off limits.
It's not
anymore.
an either or thing. Like you can, saying that you have to really carefully. You have to really carefully consider, the total like terraforming of a planet, like taking a whole planet and like saying like, no, we're going to basically make a whole different kind of planet from this. That's not an either or thing of like, either we do that or we have absolutely no humans ever go here at all. Okay. So there's plenty of middle ground.
You made the case for me, because that was absolutely the next logical point. But that's the point that they seem to miss on that other side of the argument. And you can do both. You can preserve life and expand human life throughout the galaxy. And it's imperative that we do so. The window of opportunity to be able to do so is open to us right now. But that window may not be open forever. And when it closes, it may never open again, or it could take thousands of years. There was technologies in Roman times that were lost during the Middle Ages. The plagues, part of the reason the plagues of the Middle Ages were so rampant was because they didn't have proper irrigation.
Right. Or
Rome had proper
sanitation.
Irrigation.
Yeah, sanitation systems that existed in Rome 2,000 years ago that were lost.
Right. I mean, eventually we
got it back, but
they had to go through the plagues, and they had to go through some hard times before they were forced to reinvent everything. But they eventually got the technology back, and then were amazed later to discover, wow, this stuff exists years ago. And this is what could happen again with space transport technology. If you really want to break Elon Musk down in very simple terms, in my opinion, what he's building and what he wants to build, it's not the grand, Tony Stark vision kind of thing, like the Marvel cinematic future sort of idea. I mean, Elon Musk is building a space truck company. He's building a semi-truck to Mars company. Is what he's building right now. And that's what he's been building. It's just that he had a lot of steps to go through first, stepping stones to get through first, in order to be able to afford to build the interplanetary space trucking company, which is Starship. He had to do everything he did, basically. all the companies had to succeed as they have in order to make it possible to do what he's just now currently being able to do by building Starship. And looks like Mars is in the crosshairs for SpaceX. This is a discussion that's been going on for a long time as well. The one you just brought up about who's going to get there first. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's a very popular physicist out there. Very charismatic dude. Anyway, he really thinks NASA is going to get there first, but he's been saying that for years, and he hasn't really been saying.
Yeah, NASA's been saying that for decades. Like, it it seems it's like NASA getting to Mars is like one of those things that always seems to be 20 years away.
Yeah, perpetually off into the
Yeah.
future. You'll never get there. And Elon
Yeah.
realized that, and that's why he started SpaceX. Really, I mean, it really boils down to that. And Elon wants to get humans off of this planet. Not all, of course. He just wants to get 1 million or so to the surface of
at
Mars.
least some to create like a multiplanetary species, which increases our chances for survival of the species long term. Because certainly, you could have some extinction event on Earth, or even not an extinction event. Like you alluded to, like a civilizational collapse event, where you have like a scenario where technologically we regress a few hundred years. I mean, it's happened before, and our normalcy bias will tell us like, oh no, it couldn't happen now, but I mean, it certainly could happen now. And so if you have a technological civilization on a neighboring planet, then there's a chance that we survive at a level of higher technology.
Yeah, man, there's no reason to rest on our laurels here. All this talk about the Earth won't be at risk for 1 billion years, so we can put this off. Man, that is so lame. That is laziness, and that is being ill prepared for the future. There is no reason to rest on your laurels right now, people. You have no idea when the alien invasion is coming. We need the high technologies that Elon Musk is trying to build, among other people. But no, we're not. We shouldn't be sitting back saying, "Hey, in 100 years or so, this will happen." No, it's happening now because Elon's pushing hard for it to happen, and NASA
Elon,
is basically
like so many of us. Elon probably got sick of constantly hearing like, "Oh yeah, we'll get to Mars in about 20 years. We have this 20-year plan in NASA," and then okay, they're saying that in the 90s, and then 20 years later, it's the 10s, and now it's like, oh yeah, we'll get to Mars by the 2030s. And so like a lot of us, like Elon's kind of sick of hearing that, except Elon, thankfully, is just uber successful entrepreneur, and so now he has the resources to try to figure out like, okay, can I pull this off faster than NASA can?
That's right. And Neil deGrasse Tyson has been very skeptical that he could do it. And by the way, no disrespect to NASA. From the beginning, Elon Musk has been promoting NASA, been a big fan of NASA. In fact, his very first idea before starting SpaceX was just to spend some of that eBay money that he received from the sale of eBay to have a privately funded mission to Mars where he would have the first was an ill-conceived idea of sending a mouse, but the second and better idea was a greenhouse full of kind of algae and some kind of green life, and it would be the image, the digital picture coming back to Earth of the green life on the red planet that would inspire the public to fund NASA's trip to Mars to get the humans there faster. That was Elon's original vision for how he could help out in the space industry. But through the process of speaking to Russians about buying their ICBMs so that he could have something to launch with, he found out that they were way overpriced and way old technology, and he just began to naturally ask those engineering questions that he asks with first principles. What would it really cost to build a rocket if all these parts were just laid out on a table? If there was no cost to putting these parts together into a certain configuration, what would that cost? And how much more are these rockets than that cost? Now, how close can we get to that cost compared to what they're charging for rockets today? It were those kind of questions that kind of got him started on the journey to developing what eventually became the company SpaceX and now Starship. Yeah, man, I felt like I was really going there for a second, man. I was going somewhere with that. And I lost my train of thought. Had a Biden moment.
Uh-oh.
A bit of a Biden moment there, but the point of it is
the point of it is like Elon's trying to figure out how to pull this off, how to pull it off cheaper than NASA did.
And here's the thing, like, and NASA has capitulated at this point. It's become obvious they're not going to get there first. It's going to be SpaceX. And Trump basically said, I wish I had it, to people, just believe me, I've heard it. Trump said, yeah, we'll let Elon go to Mars, and then we'll take all the credit. I mean, if I could do a Trump impression, you could totally hear him saying that. And he was joking, but not really, I mean, Trump's kind of that way, has that sense of humor. But I think it's important that Elon gets credit where credit's due and all that. But I think most important, Elon just wants the goal to be accomplished. So he'll probably be willing to let Trump take the credit, let NASA take the credit, basically. But I believe it's going to happen through SpaceX. It's going to be SpaceX that gets there first. It may be a NASA astronaut on a SpaceX rocket ship, but it's SpaceX that got him there, kind of thing. And hopefully Neil deGrasse Tyson will at least give the credit. I think he's kind of been coming around in the last couple of years, in fact. Like, he's been becoming somewhat of a Elon Musk fanboy, whereas in the beginning he was much more of a skeptic, which has been nice to see. Well, I think as far as the homesteading question, if SpaceX, whether it's a joint venture with NASA or whatever, if they can get there, then at least where they set up shop on Mars will be, the United States. Well, it will be, it's going to be weird to see how it plays out. It'll be a joint, like a public-private partnership thing, don't you think? Like, it's not going to be a full state. It's not going to be like, okay, this is the United States of Mars, and this is, the Martian state. I don't think it's going to be exactly that. It's going to be a public-private partnership kind of situation. This will be something new when it comes to government and politics, perhaps. And why would we expect that the people that are living on Mars should abide by, the type of politics or the political concerns that are going on Earth pretty much at all? It's going to be their own people.
Yeah. At least for a long time, who's going to go to Mars and enforce the will of the state there? No,
who's going to be the Karens on Mars that'll enforce the stay-at-home orders when the virus works its way over to the red planet?
I mean, you have a natural parallel there between the early colonization English settlements on the eastern seaboard. You had a long period in the early to mid 1700s of statutory neglect, where the 13 colonies really just kind of were doing their own thing for a while, because the British Crown was not going to come over here and really enforce a ton of stuff. Like, the ability to do that was limited. Of course, eventually they did, and then that sparks the revolution, because people were like, wait a minute, you guys were leaving us alone, and now you're over here telling us what to do. So you could see some version of that developing on Mars, where just simply the ability of the state to come over and enforce things is as limited, if not more so, than the British Crown's ability to, micromanage Massachusetts or Virginia in 1720 was.
Wow. Yeah, that's an awesome thought, man. So, libertarians for years have been attempting projects to try to at least prove on a small scale that government could be different than we know. Like, for example, the seasteading project. I think there's a lot of parallels to Musk getting to Mars with the goals of the Seasteading Institute, for example, among others. I think Jacques Fresco's Venus project, even though it wasn't really seriously a movement to build a city like that, but, it was kind of an inspired vision of what the future could be. And a lot of people believed in it.
Well, and that's why it's a very positive thing if Elon is starting to say liberty-friendly comments, because then you could see okay, something that if something gets set up on Mars and say, 5-10 years from now, it's going to look, more liberty friendly if it's the visionary behind it is having these kinds of thoughts.
Absolutely. In fact, I think I just remembered where I put the files for the video that I intend to make at some point. Man, I have so many videos that I've begun or intend to make. I'm such a bad YouTuber. Okay, here we go. I'm just going in. I'm going to see if I can pull up this video and then show you the clips, if I remembered correctly. I have several YouTube channels, so I'm kind of like, I did not remember correctly. This is really bad. In my human form, the memory's not as good as it was. That sucks.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I downloaded it, but Elon Musk is a libertarian. See, this is the thing. Now, I'm going to have to make the case in the video. You're going to have to wait. It's going to be hard to make the case right here. But there's a video where, and long ago, before Elon was a very popular person in the zeitgeist at all, he was just the CEO of Tesla. And in this interview, the person doing the interviewing was a libertarian and asked Elon, said, do you feel that these subsidies conflict with your libertarian point of view? And Elon Musk answers the question. He just answers the question. And basically, I gave a little bit of a case earlier about the subsidies, at least as far as the DOE loan goes. Elon, in this case, was talking about that and also other subsidies that people would point out. And he makes a good case. But the thing that he doesn't do is come back from the question and say, well, who told you I was a libertarian? Mm-hmm. I'm a Democrat. He didn't say that. He didn't correct him at all. He just took it at face value. Of course, I'm a libertarian. And of course, he's a libertarian. They're pretty much all libertarians, these guys from Silicon Valley that were building their companies as young men during the early days of the internet. Peter Thiel is another one, for example. He was a big supporter of Ron Paul. Now, Elon wasn't popular back during the Ron Paul days. I discovered Elon Musk at about 2010. And
so kind of in the middle of the Ron Paul revolution era.
Yeah, I guess so.
In between the campaigns, yeah.
And I began to follow him more closely towards the winding down, the 2012 campaign. It was at that time Tesla was going public, and so not only me but so many others in the world began to take notice of Tesla, the company. I was already into electric cars as kind of a side thing. Justice as well. I wish he was on the stream to be able to back me up on this, but he and I both, before we were ever exposed to libertarianism and in a direct way, through like say Ron Paul movement or whatever. We're all kind of exposed to libertarian ideas throughout life, the non-aggression principle. But as far as like specifically exposed to it, both Justice and I were into this hydrogen alternative energy idea where you could create hydrogen at home with very rudimentary products that you could purchase at Home Depot, and you could convert your car into a hydrogen powered car. And it was a whole movement on YouTube back then. And it was called HHO. I'm sure a lot of those videos are still out there. If you wanted to learn more about that, just do a YouTube search for HHO, is for hydrogen, oxygen. Because if you run an electric current through water, and you run that electric current through plates that are closely spaced together, the water molecule itself splits apart into its various components. It's the two hydrogen molecules and the oxygen molecule, the HHO. So that was the kind of the name of the movement. And it's funny, always involved in some sort of movement, it seems. Yeah, Justice and I both were involved in that movement before we even knew each other. See, we
didn't the big proponent of that die under like mysterious circumstances or something? Isn't there like some whole theory about how this technology got suppressed?
Your knowledge of conspiracies amazes me. It's deep, it's far, and it's wide. Yes, you're accurate in this.
Yeah, but then people hate me because I don't actually believe in like most of them.
His name was, if I remember it correctly, because it's been a while, is Stanley Myers. And,
yeah, that's right.
He was he was an engineer, not so much a scientist, but like garage engineer, I guess they would refer to him as. And he was always inventing things and tinkering. And one of the things he came up with was this electrolysis system for this thing, exactly what we're talking about. HHO, convert your car to a hydrogen car. If you do it as efficiently as Stanley Meyer figured out how to do it, you could potentially run your car on water alone. How about that? You know, like, and so...
Yeah, this is the stuff that I vaguely recall here. Yeah.
There's a documentary out there, by the way, if you want to learn more, like get the skinny edition of this and not have to spend, like tons of hours researching it. Just watch this one documentary. It's called It Runs on Water. It Runs on Water. And that documentary covers not only Stanley Meyer. It doesn't get into the conspiracy of Stanley Meyer being, offed by the government, but it does get into what he was doing before he was offed. I think he was still alive at the time it was made, and as well as other kind of water devices. There was a like a water hammer pump that creates hot water in a very rapid amount of time without using any fire at all. It just uses metal gears, and it like pulverizes this water so intensely that it heats it up super fast. And so a firehouse had this device installed in their firehouse, and they said it's amazing and it works, and it's like doesn't cost anything to heat water, and it can heat water super fast and super hot, amazing things like that. So check out It Runs on Water. But the conspiracy goes, Stanley Meyer was having dinner with his family, his wife, and he stands up in the restaurant and says, "I've been poisoned," and he runs out in the parking lot and dies. Like, okay, so that's the story. I'm not sure how accurate that story actually is, but of course people with that have assumed that he was poisoned because he stood up and said, "I've been poisoned," and then he dies. And there was I think there was a sale. He was a patriot. See, the thing that inspired Stanley, I wasn't planning to get into this, but here we go. The thing that inspired Stanley Meyer to invent this water fuel technology was the oil embargoes of the 1970s. It was the lines of cars waiting to get fuel and being unable to, some of them being turned away and hardly being able to make it home on the fumes they had in the car to begin with. And he said, this shouldn't be, this is the United States of America, the greatest country on God's green earth, and he's like, and I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to use my intellect and my engineering skills and invent something better than gasoline to run these cars on. And that, ergo, the water car. Now, he had a water dune buggy that actually worked. It ran on water alone. It was a dune buggy. And he continued to develop the technology through the years that he reached that breakthrough with the dune buggy. And then it was like 5 years later, I think, that he was offed. Or that he passed away, succumbed to a fish bone. Okay. That's probably what happened. And he basically he was talking about, like, I listened to one of his long lectures that he gave right towards the end of his life. He was understanding like the nature of the physics of this technology that he had created on a level that he was talking about space flight and how to use this in all kinds of different ways. Maybe he had just lost it and gone off his rocker. Who knows? I think he was kind of one of these weird geniuses. And apparently the government believes so. They purchased the technology in order to be able to create, I believe, oxygen for the submarines. He literally did sell some of this technology to the government before he died. And so, as the theory goes, the government killed him so that the technology would be theirs and theirs alone to do what they will with it and to keep it from everyone else so that you continue to have to purchase gasoline from Chevron and ExxonMobil their buddies that pay their bills and scratch their backs. And you'll never have to hear from the likes of a Stanley Meyer ever again. There was no internet. We'll just bury him and all of that. And then 20, 30 years later, along comes YouTube, and people rediscover Stanley Myers and some of the work he was doing, and the HHO community evolves, and boom, I was involved in it. I actually built one of those. I bought some kits, some research kits people were working on, and I messed up my my then girlfriend, now wife's BMW, trying to power one of these kits one time.
The water.
I mean, naively trying to create.
Right. So it's
HHO.
Not easy to do.
Well, it's kind of easy to do, but it's not easy to do it efficiently enough to run a car on it.
Yeah.
And that's why I got into electric cars, because it just seemed way easier, way more efficient, way better. I didn't entirely give up on HHO, right away, but I really started looking towards Elon Musk and electric cars. Eventually, Elon Musk came out and gave an argument against hydrogen on a physics level, which made a lot of sense. Oh. And I believe that was the red pill that snapped justice out of it, the hydrogen thing. And he kind of came over towards electric cars and Elon Musk at that point. If he were here, he could speak for himself if he's out there listening. Just trying to goad him on. Yeah. So, yeah, man, it just it made so much more sense. There's not going to be gas-powered cars on Mars. Like, that would never happen.
No, I mean, presumably there's no way to get oil on Mars.
And would you do it if you could?
Yeah.
The amount of resources it takes to pull oil out of a planet. I mean, it's immense. And the only reason they do it here on Earth is because they get so much money from it. It's trillions of dollars being pumped out of the ground. If it weren't for that fact, there'd be no reason to do it. And there's no reason to do it on Mars because the electric cars are going to show up, and from day one, they're better. You would be competing against something that's better and cheaper and faster, and and you'd have to actually build oil wells on Mars, and that is just ridiculous. Or try to find some oil-rich asteroid in the vicinity.
Yeah, which presumably don't exist.
Capture orbit.
I mean, I know there's like a conspiracy theory that says that oil is not actually dinosaurs that have been mushed into liquid over the course of millions of years. But assuming that mainstream views of what oil is are accurate, and assuming our mainstream understanding of the potential, level of which life on Mars ever developed to is accurate, then you would not be able to find oil on Mars because there is presumably no complex life that's ever developed there to the point where you would have like oil that was created over the course of millions and millions of years. So you'd have to be importing oil from Earth somehow, which seems like just a huge, costly pain in the ass to do.
Well, it wouldn't make any economic sense. It would cost more to transport the oil than it would that you would get for the gallon of gas refined from the oil, which, I mean, just the thought. See, the whole point of it isn't to actually seriously consider doing this, and I don't think anyone ever would, because it just doesn't make any sense. And this was one of the arguments Peter Joseph used to have with his Zeitgeist movement, and not a bad argument, is that if you were to reinvent society from scratch, say on Mars, what would that be like, and what would be the things you would use in order to do this? What would be the criteria that you would access in order to make the judgments to build this new society? And basically the conclusion was it would be science and technology. It would be, engineering. It'd be the things that you need to survive, on another planet. And that is absolutely science and engineering. It's not laws and government, just makes sense. And and likewise, you wouldn't have a gas powered car ever. It just wouldn't ever happen. You know, they're gonna bring a Cybertruck over in one of those starships, probably the very first one that gets there. The Cybertruck's going to be sitting there waiting for Elon when he arrives a couple of years later. Fully charged, ready to go.
And ready to go. Yeah.
You know, those starships themselves could make a pretty good space hotel. I mean, land that sucker on Mars and just leave it there. Hotel. You've got yourself the beginnings of a space colony right there. And as far as like homesteading the moon, right now there's a big competition. And it was just announced last week. That should have been one of the articles I had ready to pull up, but I don't. It's Boeing versus one other company that I'm forgetting the name right now, versus, maybe you could look it up while I'm struggling to remember it, and versus SpaceX. And so these three launch companies have been contracted to be, one of them will be the one to develop the lander for the moon, moon mission. And this was actually really big news for SpaceX, because they're putting all their eggs in the Starship basket right now, which means they don't have some kind of tiny lunar lander in development like the other companies do. They've got their eggs in one basket too, and that is getting the contract for the moon missions. Unfortunately, I bet it's going to go to SpaceX, and it's probably going to be, believe it or not, Starship. I think Elon has just come up with a engineering workaround where they have certain type of.
So it's
found
SpaceX. It? Yep, SpaceX.
You want to share that out?
Well, I'm looking at it on my phone.
Share your screen.
Well, no, it's not on my screen. I'm looking at it on a different device. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Dynetics.
Oh, Dynetics. That's the one.
Yeah.
That's right. And the landers that Dynetics and Blue Origin are making are more your traditional Apollo era style landers that you would expect to see. Very lightweight aluminum frames with small thrusters and so forth. Very limited in their capacity to carry cargo or anything like that. But Starship, on the other hand, is gigantic spaceship that the concern is, if it were to try to attempt a landing on the raw moon surface, it would kick up so much debris and with so much velocity coming out of those Raptor engines that it would create a cloud that would circle the moon and make it uninhabitable. Like, this is the kind of talk. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty dramatic, and it sounds pretty scary as well. I'm sure Elon has some thoughts on this. And so maybe even in that article, I don't know the details, but what I read is that they have come up with a modification for Starship in order to be able to land it on the moon surface without kicking up all that dust. And I think it involves having lunar thrusters positioned like towards the top of the spacecraft. And because the gravity is really kind of weak, they don't need the Raptor engines to fire up in order to do a propulsive landing. They could just use the really small lunar thrusters to do the landing. And if they do it right, it shouldn't kick up that much dust at all. And once they've landed there, the Starship can carry like thousands of tons. It's like incredible. The capacity of this thing can carry like 100 people is what they're aiming for. So they'll be able to bring enough supplies to build the moon base in one trip. Pretty much. Again, bring a Cybertruck, leave it there. That'll be your workhorse. Make sure it's one of those. He was talking about having creating a Cybertruck that was what do you call it? Well, it's made for space, so it has to be vacuum sealed, pressure sealed. Yeah, pressure ready, pressure sealed.
Yeah.
Basically, it could go in space, could go underwater. So he's talking about having a version of Cyber. So definitely bring one of those, leave one of those at the moon. That's your workhorse. Build a landing pad so in the future Starships can land on the moon and not have to worry about kicking up dust ever at all because they have a nice concrete landing pad. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. We're actually living in a time where we can start speculating about what a future for common people in space is going to be like, and not like totally be laughing at ourselves thinking that we're, ridiculous to be talking about these things.
Oh, and that's quite the change from even just a few years ago when, like we were talking about earlier, it was always just like, oh yeah, that's like 20 years off. And then 20 years later, it was still 20 years off.
Yeah.
It was getting to the point where like, you were just ridiculous if you were, saying that like, oh, we could colonize, the moon or Mars. I remember Newt Gingrich, I'm not much of a Newt Gingrich fan, but this is one where like he unfairly got laughed at. Like Newt Gingrich like came out and talked about, oh yeah, we totally need to like make colonizing the moon a priority. And everybody laughed at that. I don't know, this was in the 90s or the 2000s or whenever he was big. And so people are just like, oh yeah, this guy's just like totally ridiculous, like making moon colonization part of his platform. And no, that wasn't ridiculous. I mean, Newt Gingrich is ridiculous in other ways, ideologically. But now here we are like 20 years or whatever after he was saying that. And it's like, no, nobody thinks that that's ridiculous anymore. It's like back on the table in a way that it wasn't at one point.
That is such a good point. You're so right. I remember that song that we played on one of the streams a few weeks back.
Oh yeah, the Mars Symphony of Science, Mars song.
Exactly. Channel Melody Sheep on YouTube, by the way. And, the reason he made that song was basically coming from a similar place where Elon was coming from when he was trying to inspire that Mars mission. It's like, I'm going to make this song. This is going to inspire people to want to get back to getting humans to Mars. And there's just been so many people, and the people he featured in that song, the scientists, they've been talking about getting humans to Mars for decades. And they're talking about, what, another 50 years? Like, come on. It's not going to happen in our lifetime, people. And Elon just, at some point, cracked. It was like, this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like, I have $300 million sitting in my pocket from the sale of eBay to Amazon. Sorry, the sale of Amazon. Sorry, the sale of, what was it?
Sale of
Help me out
eBay,
here.
right?
No, it was the sale of PayPal to eBay.
PayPal.
That's what. Thank you.
Yeah.
You did help me though. You were totally wrong, but just the fact that you said that, it did help me. It jogged it. Thank you. So Elon was one of the original PayPal mafia. That's like the 8 or 9 dudes that went on to create great things like YouTube and LinkedIn and other endeavors that were successful from that. But they all worked on the PayPal thing. Elon was one of those guys. And Peter Thiel, his Silicon Valley buddy, was basically installed as the CEO, and Elon was forcibly removed as CEO of PayPal, because Elon had this grand long-term vision of what he wanted to do with PayPal to make it basically a global online banking institution that would replace the banking institution that we currently know of. Well, that's totally not going to happen. No one's going to let that happen, right? I mean, if that's possible, then Donald Trump could be president. So they took the company from him because they're like, Elon's naive, grandiose ideas are going to lose us a fortune. We must take the company from him. And so they did that and installed Peter Thiel as CEO. And Elon was bummed out about it, of course, but he wasn't really bummed out about that payday. That would have probably never came had they not made that strong early, corporate move. That was one of his early corporate strong-armed moves that he experienced that, has helped him to become the leader of industry that he is today. But he had that money set on the side, and he said to him, he used to tell the story a lot. He doesn't really get into it anymore, but he said, a lot of my buddies, they went off and bought islands. And I thought about buying an island. I had enough money to buy a group of islands if I wanted to. But then I thought about how long could I do that and not lose my mind from boredom. He's like, it wouldn't take very long and I would start losing my mind from boredom. Actually, that might be what's going on with him right now with this quarantine. He's starting to lose his mind from boredom.
Could be, yeah.
Like a lot of people, it seems. You know, there's people driving so aggressively out there for no reason in LA. People are just losing their mind.
Yeah, I've noticed that as people have gotten presumably sick of quarantine, it's like, oh my God, everybody has reemerged the last couple of weeks, or at least the people who have reemerged are driving worse than usual.
Yeah. And I've even seen a lot of accidents. Like there's hardly any cars around, but there's all this glass and debris from accidents. I mean, I don't get
people,
that.
Did you forget how to drive in the last, month and a half here?
Well, maybe it was because it was so easy to drive during quarantine. There were so few cars on the road that people were just taking their liberties and doing full chat messages on their iPhones, driving down the road, just like, maybe before they would glance down and maybe type an emoji or something, but now they're having full on conversations and just plowing into people through intersections. Because it was always in an intersection where I was seeing that. But anyway, be careful out there, people, by the way, if you're out there. I've been out there driving for Postmate in order to kind of have a bit of income during these days. And by the way, if you want to support the stream and you like what we're doing here tonight, there's a code where you can sign up to drive for Postmates in the description below. And also DoorDash. I've been driving for DoorDash lately. In fact, DoorDash has been a little bit more profitable for me than Postmates in recent days. And I decided to go with these companies rather than, like, say, Uber Eats, because with Uber, everything's really particular. You got to go through lots of background checks because you're dealing with driving people potentially. Even if you don't ever drive people, you got to go through the process as if you're going to. And that's a real big hassle. So, Postmates, you can download the app, sign up in 5 minutes, and be driving that day, get paid that night. It's pretty amazing that way. So if you want to drive for Postmates or DoorDash, check out in the comments below. Use the links there to get started, and that'll, if you actually are serious about it and you do a certain number of completed deliveries, they're going to send yours truly, Anarcho-Jesus, a check, and I'm going to use that money to buy nice microphones and lights, and probably none of that, maybe some weed, whatever. We're just going to get along here in life, do what we've got to do, and appreciate you guys out there. Hit that thumbs up for still with us. Appreciate y'all. All right. What were we talking about in our that was a little bit of a, by the way, speaking of 420 and SpaceX has been building this Starlink constellation around Earth, and they have, I believe it was last week, they successfully launched another batch of Starlink satellites to have, the goal of Starlink is to create space-based internet for anyone on planet Earth that wants it, basically. And they now have 420 satellites. 420 satellites. They narrowly missed launching that on 420 by just a few days. And I know that Elon probably had some good laughs trying to get that off on time, and
almost made it.
Good effort, Elon. Good effort, man. We know what you were going for. We get it. Also, people are protesting. We have a friend who, I don't know if she's listening or going to join us tonight, but if she's really invited and has the link and so forth. It's a friend of ours back from the Ron Paul days who's been in the news this week for the LA protests, the protesting the stay-at-home orders. I keep forgetting what the name of this program is. So the stay-at-home, what's it called?
Oh,
the official name?
I don't know what the official name is.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. It must not be very well branded.
Yeah.
It doesn't stick. Stay-at-home is more sticky.
Boring, pretty, safer at home or something.
Yeah. So people are getting restless and they're out there protesting, and for good reasons, and some of the same reasons Elon was sharing in the earnings call. I believe if we are able to get our friend on the stream later, she would agree with Elon on this, and then say that that's probably part of the reason why they're out there. I'm just wondering if there's another reason, and I can ask her if she comes on later. I'll be able to question, but you know, in the circles, in our circles back in the Ron Paul days, there were quite a few tax protesters. Remember the tax protesting?
Oh yeah,
I in fact tried to do it myself.
Decades. Yeah,
it's been a thing, and it's still a thing, except for most of the larger voices in the movement are in prison now, so it's not as big a thing. But we have a friend, Jabba, who got into one of those groups. In fact, he got deep into the tax protest life. I mean, he was preparing for prison, basically, because if you get deep into the tax protest movement, basically all the research you do, at first, you don't realize this at first. At first, it's just like you're studying about law, and you're studying about why it's unjust for the government to tax you, and how that's, can be considered theft and so forth, and how their own laws would support that idea and so forth. But eventually you get to a point where you realize that what you're actually doing is preparing for prison. And it was at that point.
The unfortunate, the thing is, like, as much as a lot of the tax protest movement says, like, if you say this word or that word in court, like, you don't have to pay taxes. I mean, I'm way oversimplifying it there, but the point is that, like, whether they're legally accurate about that or not, like, ultimately doesn't matter, because the state has the guns, and a lot of the people who have tried those arguments have ended up doing, like, a lot of really hard time. Peter Schiff's dad, Erwin Schiff, was a relatively famous, tax protester. The government told him, like, stop selling your books that tell people that the 16th Amendment, I forget which version of it his books were claiming, whether it was the 16th Amendment was not really ratified, or whether it was the, say these words in court version. But anyway, Erwin Schiff was told not to sell these books and, like, promote these ideas anymore, and he died in prison.
Well,
So
it's all coming back to me now.
Yeah.
Man, thank you for that refresher, for sure.
Yeah,
and,
so a lot of good people have done really hard time over the years.
Yes, they have.
Yes, they have, because of this stuff.
And one of the ones that Jabba was I think really following closely ended up, not faring too well in prison, and that's when he decided to clean up his act and get, square this bill with the state, which is not a small endeavor when you've been doing this for years. It's not a small thing. You can't just wake up one day and be like, you know what? I decided I'm going to be a good citizen and start paying my taxes again. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. It's a big deal. And I'm afraid that, and by the way, I know from experience it's a big deal, because I tried this. I never got so involved like Jabba, where I'm following some group and, like, pull all of my cash from traditional banks. I did live without a traditional bank for a couple of years, and I did not pay taxes for a couple of years. I've squared that all now, but the thing is, in order to get square, it was a hell of a lot of work. I couldn't just do it in 1 week's time. And I remember Jabba was at the point where it took him, it may be over a month, maybe a couple of months of, like, constant, like, part-time job level effort, working with a tax man to try to square the bill and to get himself back square with the state, so that he can start working and so forth, get back into society. And it's a really big deal. And so it dawned on me, I don't know, it's just a theory, but maybe some of our libertarian friends or Ron Paul adjacent type friends that are involved in protesting the stay-at-home might also be tax protesters. Maybe they're not in any position where they could receive any kind of benefit from the state at all through this. So we're in a situation where most people that pay taxes receive money in their bank accounts a couple of weeks ago. Some of those payments were to the tunes of, like, thousands of dollars, just magically appearing in your bank account if you pay taxes and are in the system. If you're not in the system, that didn't happen for you. This whole situation is going to be a whole lot more difficult for the person who's not in the system and was able to receive those benefits, those repayments of the money that they plan to steal in the future or whatever. However you want to frame it, they're giving you money to stay home.
Yeah, but not a lot of money. I mean, there have been a lot of people who have justifiably been complaining that, like, in this day and age, how far does $1,200 really go?
Well, I guess it just depends on the situation. I mean, for me, it's been a different situation than that. Yeah, there was the 1,200, but then there was the wife also who got the 1,200, and then she also, being very clever and from the People's Republic of Beijing, worked very diligently to get us on that unemployment as well, which was not small and surprised the hell out of me. And basically, I'm just giving it all back to her because she did the work.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's not small, actually. And I took out all this cash, and it's sitting on the side for emergencies. I haven't had to dip into it one time as a result. I mean, I'm just being real here. And look, this is not an argument in favor of anything that the state is doing. I'm just saying, because I squared my tax stuff back in the day and I didn't continue down that path of tax protest, I was in a position now where these benefits were freely flowing in my direction, and I didn't have to really do too much. Well, my wife had to do a little bit more, but with the unemployment, which I've never done before, I've tried to do it in the past. It's always been really difficult process that I just, I mean, I could have done this many times over the years, and I have tried several times and just never could fully get through the process to actually getting any money from the government to me. But in this situation, money's flowing a lot more freely, right? So anyway, I don't know exactly where I'm going with that other than I have questions, and it's kind of a line of questioning that, I'd like to kind of ask some people and get to the bottom of it and just see. I mean, maybe people are just really suffering because they didn't get any of that, and they can't get any of that because they've also been involved in movements that block them from being able to have an easier time for themselves.
Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting to see is kind of the diverse rationales, the diverse ideological backgrounds, and everything that's kind of gone into the composition of these protests. Because
and
I
that's
also
what
get the impression. I get the impression that there's a lot of small business people who are very much like, behaving above ground in terms of their relationship with the state and taxation, but who have gotten involved in these protests because, like, their businesses are getting totally screwed and shut down.
That's a really good question. I'm just writing it down so I don't forget.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious as well. I like Juliet, as well as many of our Ron Paul friends back in the day, were also involved in Occupy Wall Street after the Ron Paul revolution kind of dispersed. And that was kind of a pivot, I guess, for the Ron Paul, a lot of people in the Ron Paul revolution. But that was a very diverse movement. It was mainly started by left socialists, if I recall correctly. But you had all these capitalists, joining ranks. And,
right. Like, people forget that was.
I'm wondering if this is
a
more
very, like, ideologically diverse scene there. We know people, like you just said, who are involved in the LA version of Occupy LA. There's a big, Occupy camp out at LA City Hall. And I remember estimating that about a third of the camp was Liberty people, broadly defined. Okay, so that's 2011. And so Liberty people broadly defined, meaning kind of like the mishmash of, like, libertarians, but then also kind of like more your Alex Jones types, because that was, bigger and not quite as, just suppressed and deplatformed back then. So, and then like obviously you had the anarchists and you had eventually like more mainstream liberals. But at the Occupy LA, there was a giant mural. I would have to do some digging to get the image of this, but there was a giant mural depicting the Federal Reserve as like this, Cthulhu type tentacled monster with its, tentacles holding like, armaments and missiles and like strangling, like small businesses and,
I remember that.
And so on. Yeah. And so that's not the kind of thing that you would expect to see at like, what you would normally think of as like a socialist protest. But that was like a point where like, kind of like your left anarchists, your liberty people were having like a constructive dialogue there. And part of that ended up being around like the nature of the Federal Reserve. Like, hey, you hate, you call it capitalism, but, corporatism. Okay, what's at the core of that? Okay, it's like this thing called the Federal Reserve, and boom, here's like this like badass mural kind of depicting like what's really at the core of like, what you think is kind of wrong with the economy here. And so that was like an awesome dialogue that was going on. So
yeah, man.
So yeah,
the Ron Paul people were out there every day.
Yeah. And so that was huge and positive. And you know me, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but sometimes I wonder if like some of the identity politics and stuff we've seen in the years since then have been played up to like try to break apart some of that dialogue. Like you had people from different ideological perspectives starting to question like the Federal Reserve, starting to question, the 1%, as Occupy Wall Street called it. You had this kind of like grassroots populism that was like really crossing over ideological lines. So what better way to like draw the attention off of the 1% than like figure out a way to like split that back apart and get people back at each other's throats? Like, okay, we're not worrying about like the 1% anymore. We're worrying about like the Mexicans and the Muslims, if you're on the right, or no, we're worrying about white privilege, if you're on the left. Okay. Versus like the 1% and like that Federal Reserve Cthulhu, image from the mural that we had down there. So yeah, anyways, I've always kind of wondered that.
Really good point. Man, that is great points. Excellent points, Darth Yoda. And a nostalgic trip down memory lane as well. And and I just wonder if some of that's been lost in this, or if this is maybe a chance for a revival of sorts of those sort of in the Fed ideas that permeated through the Occupy Wall Street that kind of was a spillover from the Ron Paul revolution, the in the Fed, and then with Occupy Wall Street, there was just such a perfect, just seemed like an obvious overlap, and many Ron Paulers took advantage of that and exploited it. I think even some of our people were dating some of their people through all of that. Yeah. It's funny to say our people, but you know what I mean?
Well, no,
like, it felt like that
it was
back
a
in those
beautiful
days.
way that like, what now would be called kind of like the Bernie Bros.
Right.
We're coming together back then with like the Ron Paul Bros and like having this healthy dialogue and understanding like kind of what the common enemy was.
Or what Tim Pool is attempting to dub the Biden babies.
Yeah. But, unfortunately, no, you're not seeing that now. Like the kind of the questions right now are still breaking down over like really partisan lines and sometimes on even these identity politics type lines. So
yeah, that's the big part of it. Yeah.
That
seems like that's all it is these days.
You're not going to see like any Bernie Bros out, calling for an end to the lockdown. I guess at this point. So I mean,
well, that's the thing, and
I'm still curious
to find
though,
out from Juliet.
I'm still curious, to find out from Juliet what kind of ideological diversity is at these protests. Like, even if it is like more limited than it was at Occupy, even if it's like ideological diversity where, it's like what percent are libertarians, what percent are kind of like partisan Republican Trump supporters, what percent are like maybe more radical, like kind of Alex Jones types, or even like more radical nationalists. What really is the ideological makeup of this stuff right now? I mean, I can kind of like make guesses based on like the images that I'm seeing, but it would be
what would you guess? What would you guess? I mean, just for fun.
I mean, it's
We're not
really
gonna hold
mixed.
you to
Like, I mean, it's varied based on like where I've seen the images. Like, I've seen some images that are clearly look like grassroots Trump rallies, but I've also seen images of people flying like not just the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, but flying like the yellow, the gold and black, like anarcho-capitalist flag. So, it seems to vary.
I'm assuming
but
that
on
least
the other hand, I have not attended like any of these protests myself. So I am only guessing based on like videos and images and things that I've seen so far.
Yeah, and sorry about that. I haven't attended these either. I mean, I took the mark of the beast, therefore I cannot. They're paying me to stay home, therefore I must.
Yes.
That's I know that's so lame, right? But here's the thing. This thing's not over. It's not like I won't be out there in the streets, perhaps. It's just a matter of timing. And I think we only disagree on the timing. I've never disagreed on most of the points that have been brought up, on the other side of the debate. It's just that a wait and see approach, a better safe than sorry approach, just having a different sense of timing and of would you say urgency?
Mm-hmm.
That's for me. The debate really just comes down to that, not so much all the peripheral issues and the in-house stuff that people like to get into. I mean, that stuff is not nice. It's kind of fun at times, but it doesn't really profit me. It doesn't make me or my family any safer. It doesn't actually add anything to my bank account. It doesn't help me to achieve my goals. It doesn't move me closer to the things that I'm working on, the projects that are unfinished still that I need to get done. Just like spending a lot of time on the conspiracy aspects just seems to me a little bit of a waste of time right now. This really rare moment that we have in our lifetime to actually be able to get some things done and to do some things and to focus on some things when you just have weeks and weeks and weeks of not having to go to work. the thing that you always wished would happen and now you wish would be over.
Yeah. So you're trying to like take kind of a positive spin, at least on a micro level of like, hey, this is my chance to like try to get some stuff done.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, by the way. Appreciate that compliment. Yes, it is. I am trying to keep things positive. I have been from the beginning. Some people misunderstood and said I was causing panic by talking about prepping early on, but that wasn't to cause panic. It was just knowledge is power, and it's a very positive thing to prepare early if you're going to need it. And I just had a really strong sense that you were going to need it, and I just I put my money where my mouth is, and I prepare accordingly. And this is the thing that kind of would be really disappointing if I found out that my libertarian friends were unable to receive any benefit or help from the government through all this. I mean, I'd be really bummed out for them. And I'd also be kind of bummed out because it was some of them that taught me about being. And I took those lessons to heart, the lessons about being a prepper and always having a bug out bag and always having a plan and being several steps ahead and to never really fully trust these financial markets and so forth. I took those lessons to heart. And as a result of that, I found myself over prepared for this whole thing. And I hate to be over prepared when I have friends out there that are struggling and can't even kind of make rent this month. And by the way, it's that time again. Rent is due, people. Well, actually, it was due a few days ago, so hopefully you made it. You still with me, Darth Yoda?
Yeah, absolutely.
There you are, man, just listening intently. Just wanted to check in with you. Yeah, man. Interesting topic. So hopefully Julietta join us. But if she doesn't, we'll get her on in a future stream. You know, she showed up in Chinese news even.
Yeah. So was that like Chinese state media, or was that local Chinese language news in the LA County or something?
Yeah, it was just the local Chinese news. Nothing like coming out of the CCP or anything.
All right.
Do you imagine
the
President
lead story in the People's Daily today?
Yeah. We must stand up to this Juliet and her protest.
I lost you there for a second.
Anyway. Oh, did you? Well, anyway, I was just trying to make a really bad joke. So moving on. It's not David Icke's channel got flushed. Had you heard that?
What happened there?
Well, just following up from previous story, David Icke had that live stream on
the one that you were
London
really
Real
irritated with because he called Elon Musk a sociopath.
Yeah, he called him a super psychopath. Is the quote super psychopath. Yeah, I definitely have a problem with that. Just listen to the earlier part of this podcast to find out why. Anyway, his channel has been removed from YouTube. And in fact, as the turd in the punch bowl he is, you could say his channel has been flushed.
Wow. So I wonder what the last straw was for his channel. So
it was that interview.
He survived Alex Jones being purged by
that's true,
over a year.
Over a year at least. But it seems that all of his talk of 5G being the catalyst that got the COVID kicked off in the first place is a little much for the YouTube censors.
Oh, so it was the 5G theory that was his demise.
Yeah. Never mind the reptilians flowing from Hollow Earth. Yeah. It was the 5G theory that did him in. And by the way, I haven't looked closely at the 5G theory, but I have heard one argument that I guess, to be fair to the 5G theory, should be known and put out there and respected. I guess David Icke wasn't saying that 5G is the only thing that causes this, but rather it was the catalyst that started it. Yeah. And then it proceeded naturally from there in a more natural way, as you would expect viruses to spread, to be transmitted. Not that only 5G causes it, but rather 5G was the catalyst to start it. I mean, it's still a bunch of bullshit, but to be fair, that's what the actual argument is, not as people have been saying that, wow, there's only 5G in a few nations. How is it possible that it's all around the world, this disease? Make sense?
Yeah.
Never say we're not fair. Never say.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking here and wondering. Let's see, I mean, should we get the Romans 13, or should we? We'll save the Libertarian Purity Test. You know what? Actually, before both of those things, I want to get into this. This is what I want to get into. Okay, here it is. I got to share my screen out again. I want to get your reaction to this, and I haven't really watched this through thoroughly myself, so I also will be reacting to this. But mentioned earlier that there's some things happening in this world of Lucasfilm and Star Wars. Well, Kathleen Kennedy, who is rumored to have been stripped of her creative powers, is flexing her producer muscle. And a couple of weeks ago, she has brought on a new hire. And let's see. She's decided to save Star Wars, and this is how they're going to do it.
Okay.
So they've hired this lady here. Can you Let's see. Have I shared the screen properly? Can you see?
Yeah, I see an image of a. Oops, now we lost it. But there's like 3 people here. All right.
Yes. Okay. So the one farthest to the left here, wearing the satiny green.
Okay.
She's the new hire, and basically, Kathleen Kennedy has brought her in to lead up a brand new series for Disney Plus, a brand new television, an original property for Star Wars. And get this, and this is what's really going to save Star Wars. It's an all-female show.
Okay. So do we know anything more about it than that?
No. I mean, other than it's going to have nothing to do with Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader or anything you ever knew. This is going to be set in a part of the galaxy you never heard of, and it's going to be all female centric. I mean, wow, this is a groundbreaking, turn of events for Star Wars here. I mean, man, we'd never heard this before. So let's hear it from her own mouth and marvel at the genius of Kathleen Kennedy and her new hire.
I think white women need to kind of step up their game, to be quite honest. Like, sorry, I'm calling you bitches out. Like,
can you hear that?
Heard something about white women need to step up their game. I'm calling you bitches out.
Okay, so you can hear it. Okay, good. I'm gonna
barely, but I at least caught that SJW trope there.
Yeah, the volume on this seems super low, but let's give it a try. See if we can get through it. It's only a couple of minutes, but let's listen to her.
you really do, because there's we can.
I mean, to be fair, she's not specifically talking about Star Wars here in this. I just wanted to make that clear. The context of this is. I guess she's speaking at Variety. I mean, anyway, this isn't like a Star Wars interview, is what I'm saying. This is just kind of getting a sense of her in general and her attitude and her worldview about Hollywood and how Hollywood should be run and the way movies should be made and so forth, and how she's going to apply that to Star Wars.
I couldn't agree more with everything that these brilliant women are saying. But I'm also seeing the silent killer, which is a lot of white women at the top who are kind of reinforcing a lot of old ideas. I think a lot of it have, to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll just speak from my own personal experience. It's just I wasn't sure how to be an ally. I wasn't sure what type. I got so caught in what kind of terminology I was supposed to be using and being politically correct, and so as I started to rise, and I started to just get more blunt and just start saying I would like a black writer, because if I said diverse, you get well, white is diverse, which is something somebody said to me, and I was like, wow.
Wow, just wow. Wow, just wow. I literally can't
look at this face. Oh God, I'm gonna screen grab. Yeah, I had to screen grab that. That's gonna be a thumbnail. Wow, what are you thinking of this? Is this gonna save Star Wars?
I'm not even hearing anything about Star Wars at this point. I'm hearing a lot of just real, current year left cliches, honestly.
I can see why Kathleen Kennedy likes her.
Yeah. I'm just not. I'm not sure I've heard enough yet to hear a coherent argument yet that she's making. It was something about white women are promoting old ideas, which presumably are also bad ideas. Because old ideas are automatically bad ideas.
And furthermore, as a young white woman rising in the ranks, she's decided to be more blunt about her opinions.
Great.
Which is really popular these days, is if your opinions are of a certain point of view, then it's, a really popular thing to come out and to kind of shout that out, to blast it out. So that's what we're watching. All right.
It's not cool, but to really, I reached out to my, the women that I respect who are not white writers and directors, and I said,
Jesus. God, my God. I reached out to the people that I really respect. I mean, not the white ones. It's the people that are not white. Those.
All right, lost you there, Anarcho-Jesus. All right, there we go. Yeah, you're back.
Am I back? Okay. Oops.
White writers and directors, and I said, "What should I say? What language should I use?" And I think it's worth it if you're in a position of hiring power or green lighting power to reach out to people that are not like you and say, what can I do to be an ally, and how can I support writers?
That's the virtue signal alarm. Oh man, it's at maximum right now. Holy crap. Let me back that up. I want to hear it again.
And think it's worth it if you're in a position of hiring power or green lighting power to reach out to people that are not like you and say, what can I do to be an ally, and how can I support writers of color and LGBTQ and disabled writers? What can I do, and what kind of vocabulary should I be using? Because I think it's just easier. I just see it in the room. I just see them kind of go it's just easier. The guy at the top's louder. It's harder to say I think this should be a black writer. I think this should be an Asian American actor. I think it should be this type of I would like to cast and really I find it a lot as well with as a queer woman with gay characters, whether they be gay men or gay women, where
oops. My bad.
This is not a gay.
Let me back that up.
I find it a lot as well with
I was making the point as she was saying the phrase that Phil Hendry used to say for one of his characters. It was the gay reporter. He would always say, well, as a gay man and as a gay reporter, here's my opinion, but he would always preface everything he ever said about his opinion with well, as a queer man, as a gay reporter.
Well, yeah, that's that sounds like what she's doing here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I can't be the one to judge, well, maybe in the end days I will be, but for now, in my human state, I don't judge. And, but there's an aspect of some of what she's saying that seems a tiny bit racist to me. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah.
It's just a feeling I'm getting. It's a feeling I'm getting as I'm listening to her words, that they're in her attempts to be over the top non-racist. I'm sensing some racism here.
I mean, it's an over the top pile of modern left cliches. She's running through this I hate to use the word Maoist because it's not directly, Maoist, but it's like that kind of self-criticism that was a cornerstone, originally of Maoism, and sort of has trickled out, and I guess in this watered down, modern left version, where she's reciting her sins here. I used to not know what to say. I used to say I want diversity in casting. But I really should have said such and such. And so I engaged in a rectification. I guess to use the old Maoist word again. I engaged in rectification, and I went and asked the right people, and now I'm following their advice. It's just kind of cringe here at this point.
I asked the people that were the right color, right question.
Yeah, and so, yep. So we got self-criticism, but now she's redeemed herself, and is going to more effectively promote the correct ideology here. And and on we go.
Feminism, because rich white women need to feel oppressed too.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, for all I know, she's very oppressed. Like, I don't know what her life story is. But I do
by
know
by the power of white girl, I am offended on your behalf.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I don't know what her story is, and I, obviously don't know what her exact ethnic background is necessarily. But I do know ideological cliches when I see them, and I do know this kind of watered down self-criticism session when I see one too, and it's just like, oh my God, go write a good story.
God, this entire clip just makes me fucking cringe so hard.
Yeah.
This guy says I have to give a heart on that one.
So it's like, yeah, all right, have fun with this really watered down version of struggle session here.
Thanks go out to Data Racer 117, by the way, for bringing this information to us. Many Bothan spies died to bring us that video.
My God, not like the right doesn't do this sort of crap too, just in different ways. But sheesh,
the virtue signaling.
Yeah,
exactly. That face right there. That's my face as I'm listening.
Yeah.
Some out of context memes. Apropos. Yeah, this is good stuff. Well, let's find out. Here's the other thing.
Yeah, so what's the actual point here? What is so she's doing a new
the point
Star Wars show.
This girl is going to save Star Wars. This is the next. You see, Star Wars was kind of on shaky ground at one point. But it started to catch its legs again. They came out with a video game that people loved, The Mandalorian. It was a series that many Star Wars fans fell in love with in season 1. Galaxy's Edge at first seemed to be a flop, but then they opened Rise of the Resistance, and that ride kicks ass. I hear. I haven't actually experienced it firsthand, but I hear that it's many people's favorite ride now. They say you can't top this thing, man. This is the culmination of everything Disney ever learned about doing theme park attraction rides, and they slammed it all together into this one attraction. And that's one of the reasons why it's had technical difficulties.
There's potentially a more entertaining conversation than this kind of watered down self-criticism struggle session here. Are we going to see Galaxy's Edge and the parks as a whole reopen anytime in 2020? Or are we looking at 2021 at this point?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And, I watch the markets because the markets are genius. And the financial markets tend to call these things correctly, and they tend to be forward-looking. And I've been watching this share price of Disney, and it just seems really indecisive right now.
Yeah.
There's no conviction behind a bullish momentum. There's nothing there. But then again, it's not crashing down to $50 like it might possibly could do, if things don't go well. And it is very much possible that Disney could remain closed for longer. All the Disney parks, a lot longer than we expected or anyone really wanted, maybe even the rest of 2020. But they are at least making plans. Disney released an announcement on how they would reopen and some of the things that would be different and some of the steps they would take during the reopening and so forth, such as 40% park capacity and, taking temperatures of all workers every day and things like that. So they are preparing to reopen at least. And I'm telling you, I wasn't really expecting this, Darth Yoda, but I'm feeling a little bit, I'm I'm missing the parks. I'm missing the parks. I kind of wish that I could drive over and ride Pirates of the Caribbean just for fun, like I used to do.
Oh yeah,
and then drive home. Do nothing else.
Yep, I hear you.
Them were the days. Well, is this
her name,
girl
Leslie Headland? And apparently she is livid with fans.
and George Lucas also is livid with her. Wants her fired now, according to Mike Zero.
All right.
But what I want to find, there's a red carpet interview with her about Star Wars, and she basically shared. Oh, there it is. That's the search that I should have been doing. And of course, there was the entire song and dance that everyone does when they get hired somewhere new in Hollywood these days. I threw and deleted over 200 tweets and so forth. That probably all related to Harvey Weinstein. She used to praise him like all of Hollywood used to.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Even though she did go on to write a book, or not a book, but maybe it was a screenplay in which she depicts a person very much like her that was a young up-and-comer working in Hollywood for some real dickhead producer who was a womanizer who had a name very similar to Weinstein. But yeah. She said a lot of good things about him in public. I'm just trying to find that. Let's see if we can find that red carpet. I don't know if it was a red carpet or, man, it's going to be hard to find. It's going to be too hard to find.
All right. So what did she say in this interview in a nutshell then?
In a nutshell, she doesn't know anything about Star Wars. She is talking out of her ass. Like, in a nutshell, she couldn't answer the questions, the simple carpet questions that were asked to her about her new job and the Star Wars that she's going to create. She literally says, I'm so much of a Star Wars fan. Oh, the question was, here it is. The red carpet question was, who's your favorite Star Wars character? And the answer was, I'm such a big Star Wars fan. I'm so big of a Star Wars fan. I don't have a favorite character.
They're all my favorite.
Yeah, like that sort of an answer.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, what's your favorite place in the Star Wars universe, and so forth. And, are you going to revisit any of those places in your story? And she says, no. In fact, we're going to start with a clean slate. She basically gave the whole Rian Johnson spiel. And I heard today that Rian Johnson is now being attached to this project. So the question and the whole reason we're getting into this, and the question I started with, is this going to save Star Wars? Is this going to move us further along that trajectory that The Mandalorian and the rise of the Resistance ride and the new video game was kind of putting us back on the right path again? Is this going to be the next thing on that path, or is this going to just totally derail everything once again?
Yeah, clearly it doesn't sound like they're going in a Mandalorian style direction here.
Well, I don't have an answer for any of this. I just wanted to put it out there and at least let you and our audience know that this is what's going on, and keep an eye on this. Our good friend Dictor Van Doomcock has a theory, and it's more than a theory. It's pretty much been confirmed at this point, that Lucasfilm is a company that is divided into two factions. On one side, you have the George Lucas loyalists, such as Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and perhaps even Kevin Feige, who's come on recently to help out with things. We're still not sure exactly what he's going to do. And on the other side, you have the George Lucas loyalists, the Kathleen Kennedy loyalists, the SJW side of the hires. And they literally have their own wing. Like they work on different sections of the shop. Like they have their own wing. Kathleen Kennedy has her own, section of the place that she rules and reigns. And by the way, in that same interview that I can't find, Leslie Headland calls Kathleen Kennedy her queen.
Okay.
Maybe if
So
I put
yeah,
that in
exactly.
there.
So I mean, you know, presumably this new series would not be going in like a Mandalorian style direction. It would be going more in like, you know, Force Awakens type of direction.
Yeah, though the story probably won't be connected whatsoever in any way with the sequel trilogy that's been made. It'll just be another disaster that's waiting to happen. I mean, personally, this doesn't get made. Personally, this doesn't get made. Okay, I just, but you know, stranger things have happened, and we're living in a day where anything could happen. I thought we were at a point in the Star Wars franchise that
who really holds power in Lucasfilm at this point. Then, in terms of that dichotomy, like where. Are you seeing more power in the old school Lucas loyalists or in the Kennedy loyalists?
Well, that's the thing. Since Disney purchased Lucasfilm and Star Wars, it's been the Kennedy and the Kennedy loyalists that have had complete control and complete power. They've had their run of the place. And if anything good could come of that, it was like it was an accident. You know, it happened in spite of all the Kennedy chaos going on. And you know, when I say the Kennedy chaos, to be fair, let me make the case for it a little bit. I can't assume everyone knows what I'm talking about here. You know, Kathleen Kennedy has this habit of hiring directors and saying that she's going to give them creative freedom to do, to tell their stories and so forth. But if any of them ever step out of line as far as her political agenda, then they're out. They get fired. And she has fired almost every director that she's worked with on Star Wars, except for Rian Johnson. He's her little lap puppy favorite that does everything that she says, and apparently she gets along with him really well. So that relationship is intended to continue, though the fans, a large majority of the fans, do not like Rian Johnson whatsoever, not only for his shit can movie that he produced called The Last Jedi, but for the way he treats fans, like the way he mocks and trolls them online, just, I don't know what, to get a rise for himself out of this. I don't know. It's just kind of weird that a Hollywood film director who is entrusted with a movie that costs hundreds of millions of dollars to make can find the time in his day to troll Star Wars fans on Twitter. You know, there's that famous Rian Johnson photo. Let's see if we can pull it up. Where he posted a picture of himself, says, your Snoke theory sucks. You remember that?
Well, in all fairness, the fan Snoke theory did suck and was like predictable. And this is one of the areas where we disagree. Like,
bring it on.
Look, I appreciated how The Last Jedi did try to take things in a new direction. Maybe it was not always a successful direction, but like all the fan theories were like the most obvious things imaginable. Like, okay, yeah. She's going to be, Han and Leia's, other missing child. And we're basically going to have like a Luke and Leia story again. Snoke is, who the hell was Snoke supposed to be? Like I don't remember now.
Well, it was a mystery. It was a mystery up to that point.
Well, it was a mystery, but the fan theory was that Snoke is Darth Plagueis or something like that. It's like, oh, okay.
Plagueis,
whatever.
Yeah. I think it's pronounced Plagueis, but I've heard it that way as well. Well, but because it's from the the expanded universe from the books, and so most people just read the word on a page. They never heard it actually said out loud until I think it was the prequels where
you have the legend of
Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Yeah. So all the fan theories that were coming out, or the big ones, just seemed like so predictable. And so I actually thought it was good that, successfully or not, The Last Jedi tried to take things in a different direction and come up with like a new storyline and like smacked the kind of boring, predictable fan theories down a little bit. So, yes, the Snoke theory did suck. We're just going to tell the story of Luke and Leia again, except now it's going to be with, Rey and what's his name? Darth Emo.
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren. Yeah. It's like, come on, like try something new, try something a little different. And The Last Jedi attempted that successfully or not, arguably maybe not too successfully, but at least they were trying something new at that point. And yes, the Snoke theory did suck.
All right. Well, so let's see. Let's see what Rian Johnson. Well, Ryan kind of left it out there for JJ to sweep up his mess. But let's detail it. Let's get into it.
Ryan arguably was sweeping up JJ's mess, but then perhaps made a mess of his own.
Wow, this sounds like some 101 textbook quality filmmaking to me. If I ever heard it. I mean, I never heard it when I was actually in film school, but maybe the rules are changing. This is modern filmmaking where you just make it up as you go and have no plan whatsoever.
Or, where you just, modern filmmaking, you just reboot a franchise from 40 years ago and remake the same movie, but just a lesser version of it. Which
but that's been happening
arguably is what The Force Awakens was.
That's been happening in perpetuity since there ever was entertainment. Like, for example, the Greek myths, they've been told again and again, even with different characters and so forth. But, these stories, they keep coming. And by the way, this isn't like a big secret. Robert McKee's book Story, which is an industry standard if you're studying filmmaking out here in Hollywood, it makes the case that there really are no new stories.
I know the hero's journey, but The Force Awakens didn't really do the hero's journey the way the original Star Wars did. It took the plot, but sucked like the archetype, level of it out of it, and you just ended up with like, yes, a fun blockbuster, but one that was not as symbolically deep as the original trilogy, and was like not breaking any new ground plot wise. Not that like The Last Jedi was like some archetypally deep story either, but like it was at least like an attempt to say like, hey, we're going to try to tell an actual sequel here and not just a watered down remake.
Okay.
Not saying The Last Jedi was good necessarily.
I hear you.
That's like the most brilliant thing ever, but it was
I hear
at least
you that
like an attempt.
I heard your case, and I heard that your case was not making the case that The Last Jedi is something brilliant and should be respected as such. Likewise, I am not making the case that The Force Awakens is a terrific, is an amazing, genius reboot, the likes of which justifies the 40 years of waiting. Okay, but I'm going to attempt to annihilate your argument once and for all. Attempting by let's take a look at, since we've pretty much agreed that we're not going to be tearing down straw men that don't exist, straw men like that The Last Jedi is something you think is great, or The Force Awakens is something I think is great. Since we're not going to spend time on those straw men, let's actually go after this thing head on. So Rian Johnson didn't like JJ's movie, just like many Star Wars fans, not a majority, but a vocal minority didn't like JJ's movie. Therefore, this justifies Rian Johnson changing the story. Not that the story was set in stone, but there was at least a trajectory it was going on, which he had in his mind from day one to subvert. So let's see, how did it work out? He says, your Snoke theory sucks, and he's talking about the Plagueis theory and whatever other theories that people had. The clone theories, which, by the way, that's what it actually turned. Oh, that's one of the theories, was that Snoke was a clone, right? And he's controlled by Palpatine. I remember this was one of the theories that was out there. Or
Yes, the fanboy theories sucking does not therefore mean that everybody's a Palpatine was like some creative, amazing solution to the problem either.
But it's kind of strange that he says your Snoke theory sucks, but in the end, it actually turns out to be very closely aligned with one of those theories, with Snoke being a clone controlled by Palpatine, right? Okay, so that was one of the Snoke theories that sucked, but since Ryan only could ruin the trajectory by disrupting the story arc that it was on, he left it to JJ to solve, and JJ had to dig back into the box of fan theories, and guess what? It ended up being a fan theory in the end. So right now he's talking to JJ. He's holding this piece of paper up with your Snoke theory sucks, and he's talking to J.J. Abrams because J.J. used something along the lines of expanded universe mixed with some fan theory. You know, I read the story that he's drawing from the expanded universe. It was the Dark Knight comic series called Dark Empire. And it is a really great comic, man. I loved it. It came out in the 90s. And I hear there's 2 series. I only read the first, like Dark Empire 1. There's Dark Empire 2. I hear is more controversial and less fans like it, but I haven't given it a fair shake, so I can't really speak to that. But Dark Empire Series 1, man, I really loved it. You want to hear like the skinny version of what that story is about?
Sure.
Okay. All right. I'll keep it skinny, and we'll wrap. We'll wrap. But anyway, in this comic, it takes place after the events of the Return of the Jedi. So George Lucas's trilogy is complete. The story is a sequel to that. And it takes place not too long after the events. In fact, it picks up right at the end where Vader throws Palpatine over the ledge in the Death Star, and it shows that rush of whatever it was, you know, like smoke, and you can kind of hear some yelling kind of sound. Maybe that was just the wind rushing by. Well, they theorize in this version of the story that it wasn't just the sound of wind or smoke, but rather this was the essence of Palpatine. And when that body died, that very much clone body that he was wearing, that the essence of Palpatine flew out through the galaxy and made its way to a part of the galaxy in the unknown realms on a planet where Palpatine had previously set up a facility of clones where he could have himself a brand new fresh clone body to start all over again. Now, that's not exactly what happened in the Disney movie. You know, in the Disney movie, they didn't really spell it out exactly what it was. Like, they left it up to some of your imagination to speculate whether or not is this Palpatine we're seeing in this movie a clone, a new clone, like in the Dark Empire series, or is this the actual body of the original Palpatine who was somehow able to survive that fall? They kind of left it up as somewhat of a mystery, you know, JJ and his mystery boxes, you know, so that one never really fully gets solved in the movie. But you can see that they're referencing the Dark Empire clone thing. And it's funny that, like, they even had the pickled Snoke clones in the vat in the movie as Kylo's walking by. So they didn't really explain Snoke fully, but the explanation that it implies is that Snoke was a clone controlled by Palpatine, who was really pulling the strings behind the scenes the whole time. You know, that's the story that we ended up with. Is that story better than the Plagueis theory? I'm sorry. I don't think so. I would have preferred Plagueis to that crap. But I did like the Dark Empire comic. Oh, let me finish with that. So basically it's a young Palpatine body, like a brand new clone, fresh body.
The Palpatine smoke or whatever it is travels across the galaxy and inhabits a fresh clone, and there's like a facility with dozens of these young men that have been growing in these
in these chambers, I guess, these human-sized chambers. They've been growing clone bodies for decades. I guess this is like a multi-decade project. And so Palpatine is young again, and he takes the power back. He reforms the fragments of the Empire and brings them back together to regain some semblance of the Empire. And when Luke sees it, he decides to try what his father recommended. Like he thinks that maybe his father actually had some wisdom in what he proposed, that together we could bring down the Emperor from the inside, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what Vader was trying to do with Luke was to have Luke join, like it would be Luke and Vader serving Palpatine. But, you know, Palpatine had other ideas. It's like, no, Luke's going to kill Vader and then be the new Vader. And Luke had his own ideas. But in this story, Luke says, you know what? I'm going to give what Dad suggested a try, and I'm going to offer myself to Palpatine, join sides with Palpatine, and bring him down from the inside. I'll become so trusted by him and so indispensable to everything that he's doing that I will be able to bring him down from the inside.
All right. So, yeah, here's where this is breaking off from how the movie obviously actually turned out. Clearly it's different, but it's a really interesting story that was fascinating to me in the 1990s to see a younger Luke Skywalker. This was a popular expanded universe storyline.
Yeah, popular with some.
Yeah.
Unpopular with others. And in light of all that's happened, I think it's become less popular because people are hating on the new Disney trilogy. And
right. I've seen especially like people seem to be really hating on like the Palpatine, you know, Rey being a Palpatine solution. So
I like the way you put that, the solution, you know, because really a lot of problems were created in the way the story unfolded and the way that it had such a lack of structure to it that it created problems, and JJ had to solve those problems. And the Rey Palpatine was a viable solution to said problem, I'd say. And I'm not saying that it's the best solution. I mean, in some ways,
you have a couple of solutions to, you know, problems that are there from the outset. You know, the getting back to it being kind of a cliche to do the same story again, where, okay, now you have a brother and sister and they're separated and blah, 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 blah. She's a Skywalker. Rian Johnson tries the solution of just like hand waving that away and saying like, no, she doesn't have like a special lineage. She's just, you know, herself. JJ then hand waves that away and says like, no. Okay, the solution is like, I get it. Like having her being a Skywalker would be too obvious. So let's make her a Palpatine.
Yeah.
So it's a whole mess to begin with. And like, you know, everybody tries like a different solution to, you know, the whole original problem of The Force Awakens just being like way too close to the original story.
I really think there needs to be a class in film schools these days that tackles this issue, the issue of intellectual properties of a popular series, a franchise of movies, and how to handle the stories. Like right now, it seems like, okay, up to this point, the same people that were writing Star Trek were continuing to write Star Trek throughout all those years. Mm-hmm. And if it weren't them, it was the proteges of those people. But these days, there's a whole new batch of writers on Star Trek that I really highly doubt that they've ever even watched the original Star Trek before. You know, and this is what's happening with Star Wars. Now, Star Wars is a little bit more popular, I guess, than Star Trek. A little more ingrained in the cultural zeitgeist, and people are more aware of the characters and so forth. You know, it's really irresponsible the way they've handled this. I mean, look, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here and like go on a rage rant like Doomcock, but in all adult, serious, reasonable honesty, they have handled this thing horribly. Like, they have handled these franchise, Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who, and I might as well throw Terminator in there, but that's kind of an honorable mention. Like, they've handled these things horribly. And I think there really ought to be a film class in film school dedicated to how filmmakers should handle storytelling in the context of a popular ongoing franchise that's been around for decades, and in light of showing respect and preserving canon in the modern storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, that's important nowadays because, I think we, it wasn't on a live stream, but whenever we talked in our chat about like the Doctor Who episode, Family of Blood, where they did, I guess, like a showing of it, and the author kind of rewrote the ending of it, and then made some comment like, Doctor Who has no canon. Let's just like dispense with that idea already.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Now, there is some truth to that in the sense of like Doctor Who arises in a very different era of television. So, if you try to like come up with any like coherent history of the Daleks, I mean, forget it. It's just a just incomprehensible, mess. So, I mean, the show doesn't have old TV, like doesn't have the same emphasis on continuity because, even the stuff that's like, pre even VCR era, like people aren't remembering week to week, month to month, season to season, most people anyway, the details of their favorite show. And Doctor Who, of course, famously, it goes to the extreme of like the BBC was even like, wiping out episodes. I mean, there are, massive gaps in, the Doctor Who missing episodes from the 1960s that are, lost forever at this point.
Yeah.
But that's the difference between kind of like that sort of like classic TV model where there's not the emphasis as much on continuity, and today where, people don't watch live TV in the same way, and if they do, whether they do or not, like you can sit down and follow your continuity and your canon and these storylines and nitpick very easily in the way that somebody couldn't back in like the 1970s, the 1960s, or whatever. The technology and the availability of all these, every little episode of these shows has advanced to such a degree that, yes, like if you're going to be running like a long-lived franchise like these at this point, it's like, don't be surprised if you get some backlash now about continuity, because it is so easy to go in and like really call you out if you're messing up canon. Very different than 50 years ago, where you couldn't really do that as easily, where you could basically not have a canon to the same degree with like Doctor Who 50 years ago that you would have to have today. Star Wars, maybe it's a little easier because you only had like those 3 movies, but that's kind of long-winded way of saying like, I see kind of the point of like that really being like a new thing that might be needed in film school is like, hey, how do you keep these long-term franchises going in a coherent way? Because, we're at a point where like, if it's not coherent, your ass will be nailed to the wall by the fan base in a way that the fan base couldn't do that at an earlier point in, the history of these television and, movie franchises.
Yeah, man. It's really a shame too, that the stories of the past, I mean, they've already had their way with Star Wars and Doctor Who and Star Trek. And this argument, by the way, with Doctor Who, I think it's a weak argument. I get it, but it's a weak argument, especially you just made the case against it, living in the modern world with the internet. Maybe in the past it didn't matter as much, and that's why you have these sort of discrepancies.
Yeah, well, that's my point. Like, all
of these stories started out as not the intention of being a franchise of any kind.
Yeah.
I think Star Wars, of all of them, was the one that the creator knew earlier than the rest of them, the potential of this thing becoming an IP and a franchise. That's why George Lucas made the moves he did to have the personal ownership that he had, not only of making the films, but of the merchandising rights, more importantly, because that's where the real money was. And he saw that early on when they didn't. And that's the reason why he was able to get that deal for the merchandise, because they didn't see it. There was no such thing yet as a popular movie franchise that would go on and sell a lot of toys. That they only had bits and pieces, glimpses of that with like Buck Rogers and Battlestar Galactica and some of the early sci-fi stuff, but nothing
to the degree that it is, now. I
guess
mean,
there was maybe King Kong was a really popular franchise from the old days.
But I mean, think about like, you have the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, but even just to my kind of limited knowledge of like comic book history, think about like the million times like all the big name, superheroes have gotten retconned, in the comics over the years. So, canon used to be able to be kind of like fast and loose, but, not so much today. Not so much today.
And it's a shame what they've done with the stories that we grew up with and loved. They've basically ruined these things. And so I don't see a big future for, as much as Disney's struggling and trying, if they keep on bringing in people like Leslie Headland and so forth, I don't see a big future for Star Wars. And, Star Trek is really on the downswing, and Doctor Who, I mean, God, fans are just walking away in droves. I mean, basically, the thing that blows my mind is that they had a customer base. Forget about fandom and all that. Let's just talk business here. They had a customer base that was totally and completely, hopelessly addicted to their product for decades, okay? Hopelessly and completely. I'm talking about myself here, all right? So I know of which I speak. Now, they've managed not only to turn those same people off to the properties that they were hopelessly addicted to, they've turned those people away, not only from those properties, but from geekdom in general. And in fact, maybe it's a good thing for society, because we had like a generation of man children running around, fulfilling their masculine fantasies through Marvel comics and action heroes on screen in these IP franchises. And now, because we've had this ice cold bucket of water splashed in our faces from these modern filmmakers that don't know what the hell they're doing with these franchises, we've had to grow up. We've had to just capitulate and say, you know what? I guess it wasn't that important to me after all. I'm going to eBay. I'm selling my collectibles.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's probably some truth to that. I remember as Star Trek Picard a couple of months ago was getting more and more boring and disappointing to me. Like, I started wondering, like, is this objectively bad? Or has Star Trek always really not actually been that good, and like I've finally outgrown it?
I see.
I don't know if you remember me, putting it like that, but that was a thought that went through my head. Is like, dude, maybe I finally just outgrew Star Trek. It's possible.
Well, it's a conversation that, like, look, this is good stuff. And this can go on, and we will continue. By the way, people, thumbs up if you're enjoying the conversation out there. These are the types of conversations we will continue to have, because I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion tonight. But you're right, and it's not just you. I've had that same thought, and it wasn't just me. It was many in the fan base out there. Now, the question beyond that question, though, is, should it really matter? Like, should it really matter that much? Like, if adult people enjoy things from their childhood and would like to continue enjoying them for all of their lives, is that a big problem? Like, is there really a problem with that? Now, I guess it's an individual thing. You got to take it on an individual basis. Maybe for some people, it really is a problem. They're married to somebody that thought that they had like a little side hobby, but then found out that they were like completely obsessed and have filled their home with Star Trek paraphernalia and collectibles. That sort of thing happens. It kind of really strains a lot of marriages and things, because people are so attached to their properties that they just can't even get over it once they get married and try to build a life outside of the childhood stuff. I don't know, man. It's a really big issue, big conversation. Like, we're living in a generation of young men in particular, but not to be exclusively to the young boys, but especially, raised without fathers and raised by their mothers, and kind of a tragic upbringing where, like in the movie Fight Club, the character says, we have no great war. Our great war, we didn't live through any great world war, and our Great Depression is our lives. That's the quote. And and so in that movie they turn to Fight Club, but in the reality, most guys don't turn to beating one another up. They turn to comic books and Marvel movies and Star Wars and so forth. And for some people, maybe that's the perfect escape, and it should never end. And it's a real tragedy that these companies have managed to turn lifelong fans against the very thing that they loved. But on the other hand, for some people, maybe it was time to grow up and to really take the wife more seriously than your Luke Skywalker collectibles, and to turn loose of that Millennium Falcon for pennies on the dollar over there on eBay, as so many people have done. Was that like a moment of wisdom? Did we reach the moment of wisdom?
Yeah, I think we have. I have other kind of like half-formed thoughts about that, but I'll save them for next time. These are still things that I think a lot of us are trying to kind of work our way through. My half-formed thought, roughly is that, another possibility is like the franchises growing up with the fan base. And I'm thinking of like underground metal, a lot of it leaving behind its like satanic tropes and stuff in recent years, and like I think getting a little more serious, like that one video I showed you like a couple of days ago. That was more of like that Zechariah Stitchin kind of thing, rather than like the ooh, we're so evil cliche, right? So there is a possibility of like an art form, originally being kind of like a teenage art form or something, but then like gradually kind of growing up with its fan base. I think that's happened, with underground metal, some subgenres of underground metal in recent years.
You are a genius. Wow,
yeah.
You really just put words to something that's been in my brain for a long time.
Yeah, well, thank you, because that's honestly just like an off the top of my head thing that I've just sort of like thought of in the last couple of minutes here. But I'm glad it was more articulate than I was thinking it was gonna be.
Well, and it could be something to brainstorm further on, because I think that there's something to it. There's a real idea there. It's a business idea, but it's an entertainment idea. Of course, those two really these days aren't to be separated ever. But the thing is, like, can I just share a thought, a business idea, whatever you want to call it?
Go for it. Yeah.
Put it out there, because look, I don't think I'm going to have the ability or time to make it, but if someone ever did, I think it'd be tremendous and life-changing for a lot of people. Right now with this lockdown, the schools, the public schools, the government schools have been closed, right? And so they're talking to reopen the compulsory schools here in the next couple of weeks. And, it's sad that instead of using what has happened over these last couple of months as impetus to rethink things and to innovate in the space of education, instead, they're just saying, how quickly can we be over this so we can get back to the way things were before, so those kids will be out of our hair and we can go back to work and get this economy chugging along and get back into that rat race once again. And for me, I think about education a lot, because I really hated it growing up, because it wasn't education. It was compulsory schooling. For whatever it was worth, the little education that I was able to achieve during those years in that environment was all an accident, or it was me actually applying myself to something.
Yeah,
They weren't educating me. They were just, they were babysitting me, and I know that now. Anyway, the point of this is I've been thinking about the education system and how things could be done better for children to have much more positive outcomes, with a higher degree of intelligence and education at the end of the process. And in my thinking, if I were an innovator innovating in this space, the idea of doing schools the way we do them today within a classroom setting would be the furthest thing from my mind. Like just taking a first principles approach, that idea would never even come into my mind. Here, let me tell you what's come into my mind though. I thought of like an idea of having like an avatar that a child could grow up with some sort of device, not necessarily an iPhone, because kids and iPhones perhaps aren't really a good idea to be together at that age, but some sort of device that could have apps and not necessarily be accessing porn and things like that. So a device that a kid can have an avatar, and this avatar could be kind of like an algorithm, like a Google style AI algorithm that the child can ask questions to and get real answers, and in a real language, in a real world, and in a childlike language. And it can be like a friend, like a little avatar that they could grow up with over time and learn things from, and kind of have little game style gamify interactions with. And of course the focus, it can be like the long game. It's like a long game of education here. And with the interactions on a daily basis with this avatar, a person could start to learn a great deal about the world, even at a really, really young age. But here's the idea. As the child becomes a toddler, becomes an adolescent, becomes a young adult, the avatar also ages and grows, and the voice changes, and the look and appearance changes, and so forth, and evolves over the decades.
It grows up with the kid.
Yeah, basically, and it's just always way more informed, not necessarily smarter than the kid, just way more informed. Yeah. And the kid can ask in natural language questions to the thing and get natural language answers from it, and become kind of friendly with it and familiar. And really, whenever mom and dad, and this would be really great competition and incentive for parents to do a better job in the home, because when the kid comes and says, "Hey mom, why is the sky blue?" Instead of saying, "Yeah, kid, go play in your room, I'm watching Days of Our Lives." The kid will say, "All right, cool. I'll go to my room and I'll ask my avatar friend, hey, why is the sky blue?" And have like a really great interaction and positive conversation with this.
While mom is watching Days of Our Lives.
Exactly. Neglecting the poor child. And, eventually the child, it'll become kind of obvious that the child's starting to grow more attached to a digital device than to me. And maybe they'll actually straighten up and do a better job of paying attention and not neglecting their children.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it all comes down to, really, with the education. Now, imagine if the parent was attentive and also interactive with this device and the avatar, and interacting in the child's learning on a daily basis. You could basically be educated in all the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic in a very short time, and do it all from home without ever having to leave the house or go interact with other kids and get, sick. Now, this is, going to bring up the other side of the argument, is like, oh, socializing, the kid's going to be grow up to be a social retard because of this.
Yeah, but that's like such an anti-homeschooling cliche. I mean, their homeschool kids socialize in all sorts of different venues. They just don't go to, the regimented government schools, but they socialize by and large in plenty of other ways.
Yeah. Now, imagine if this avatar was actually the world's best teacher. Like the algorithm is based on the knowledge and intelligence of all of the world's top educators, like all combined and put into this thing. But it's even better than that, because with machine learning, it's gone on to surpass them even in its ability to teach this information, like Watson, the Jeopardy AI that beat out the best humans playing Jeopardy. using natural language. And this happened over 10 years ago. Okay. So we're talking about combining that sort of tech, 10 years more advanced here today, with personal devices that are pretty cheap to make now. iPhone style devices. Doesn't need to be a cell phone. It can just be a digital device with an interactive screen that you can interact with. And now this being like a top teacher in the world, like the world class, which you could get at any university, paying the top dollar for, as the child begins to become more aware of the world, and the child is reaching certain thresholds of knowledge, which is all going to be, tracked through the app, perhaps in the background, but it's all going to be tracked, and documented that this child's reaching these thresholds and getting to the point and can read and write and doing the arithmetic at this level, that the friend of his or hers through the app is going to begin to suggest research projects and the things that child has demonstrated having not only an awareness of, but a desire to learn about. And so that the person, as they're growing up, is going to be learning about reading, writing, and arithmetic, but doing it in ways through subjects that they themselves find to be the most relevant to their lives and that will benefit them the greatest into their adult years. Mm-hmm. Like at the age of 10, start working on your profession, start learning at the age of 5 about the things that you're going to do at the age of 50. This is possible if you're not being compelled to go to a government school every day for over a decade of your life. Yeah, during those fundamental formative years. Yeah. I'm just saying, how many of the problems that we're facing in the world today could have been solved by genius children that grew up actually encouraged and inspired to be more intelligent and to research the big problems and to come up with world-changing solutions had they been given the chance to do so. But instead, we got to force them all together in these influenza chambers and force them to learn how to be good soldiers and good factory workers. And, it's just amazing to me that we ever have any Elon Musks in the world like this with these type of schools.
Yeah, who are able to survive that and come out with their genius and their creativity still intact. Yeah.
Steve Jobs, there's the rare interview in the 1990s when Steve Jobs, after having been ousted, much like Elon was from PayPal, Steve Jobs was ousted from Apple in the late 80s. And during the 90s, he was building this company Next. And during that time, there was an interview, the missing Steve Jobs interview. You can find it now on Netflix, where Steve Jobs says that during his formative years, and he was, I guess a little background, Steve Jobs was adopted, and his adopted parents, the man was an engineer, and he created a workbench for Steve to work alongside him and learn engineering with basically working with electronics, microprocessors and so forth, and electronic circuits. And so Steve Jobs was very much like self-educated and had this influence at the home. And also his parents were really huge advocates against spanking children. Like that was their activist movement that they were into. Yeah. So they weren't like the kind of parents that would be beating the intelligence out of their children like so many have done. So Steve, as an intelligent child but yet still having to go to the government schools, he said that his experience there almost broke him. These are the words he used. He says, "It almost broke me. Had it not been for this one teacher that took a liking to me." He said, they almost broke my spirit. And but this one teacher saw something in me and challenged me because I was struggling so bad in my mathematics class. This teacher challenged me to learn all of the math. This teacher thought I could do it and challenged me that one summer I could learn all of the math and just test out of all the math classes. And because this teacher believed in Steve Jobs took the summer and he did all of the math for the entire high school, for the entire 4 years of high school. He completed all of the mathematics courses, so he doesn't have to ever deal with any of those teachers ever again, the ones that were breaking him, you know.
Wow.
And and as a result, he's gone on to create inventions that have changed the world that we all have in our pockets right now.
Yeah.
But if they had broke him,
maybe that never would have happened. Yeah.
You'd be carrying a device in your pocket right now that was invented by Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates instead. And you wouldn't have wanted that.
Have the mark of the beast embedded in you already.
That's right. When this COVID outbreak,
I was just about to say, like, we're ending on an inspiring note, and then I throw the mark of the beast in there.
You can't help yourself. You're of your father, the dark side.
Yes.
You're of your father, the dark side.
Yeah.
Well, I am of my Father, Father God in heaven, who really never calls, hasn't talked to me in years, it seems. Now we text. But anyway, yeah, man, this has been a really great stream. It seems like our natural stopping point has been 3 hours.
Yeah, so we made it, and we're over.
We're over 3 hours. I didn't think we could do it. We didn't even have a meme review to drag us along.
Yeah.
Just good old-fashioned libertarian conversation for 3 hours straight, nonstop. And I can't get enough of it. So you better believe that we'll be back. We'll be back,
and it won't be a 2-week break again. We'll be back
probably
soon.
not. Probably not. Hopefully we can encourage and get Justice back on the stream. Yeah. I mean, he was abducted several weeks ago, or perhaps reskinned, if you watch Altered Carbon. But anyway, likely we're going to find him just the way we found him, and in good spirits, and we'll have him back on the stream here shortly. So best of luck to Justice if you're out there listening.
Yes, indeed.
And for all of you that have tuned in, we really appreciate you sticking with us during this time. And we'll be back to revisit all these conversations and more, because it's really good, fun times. So just want to encourage yourself. Take care of yourselves and to love the ones you love. Darth Yoda,
all right,
final thoughts?
Wash your hands.
Indeed. Do the 5, people. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right.
Care.